Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Radio Free Ortona. I think 42 we're on. I'm pulling that one out of my butt, so I could be wrong. We are continuing, despite our Patty and my interlude of talking about who you can trust. We are now on part 2 of the Spanish Civil War. And Patty assures me, or actually, I guess we're talking the prelude to the Spanish Civil War. We never really talked the war itself.
We're not really talking about the war itself. We're mainly talking about the evolution of leftist thought using the Spanish Civil War as kind of the cradle.
Yeah, so I think it was providing context.
Yeah.
I think to the I think one of the questions that was coming out of that is, when is the left useful?
Right. Or what is the best? What is the best of the left? What does the left really bring forth to humanity? So just to recap, we looked at the policies, at the key policies of that early Republican administration.
Yeah.
And then we distilled it down to 5 principles. So we took the policies and then we pulled principles from them. So just to recap, those principles were equality among individuals. Equality, in other words, like, I guess you could sort of put that as equality before the law, right? No one person had rights that anybody else did. The principle of equality of opportunity. That disputes must be solved openly, fair, and transparently. Mm. Institutions must be fair and accountable. And a principle calling for a minimum standard of living amongst all peoples, or amongst all, citizens. So what I would like to do is jump fast forward to the present day and say, can we identify the key, work the same process? What are the key policy priorities of the left today? And let's go Australia, New Zealand, North America, Western Europe.
Okay.
What are the key policies that are common with the left in all these jurisdictions, and then distill principle from those policy commonalities?
And I would argue effectiveness, and I'm going to do a broad strokes comment at this point, because I can't remember who I was talking to about this. I think it was somewhere on my swing through the south of the province the last week and a half. But it struck me, because the number of homeless that we have in Edmonton alone, and we're seeing it all over North America.
Yeah.
Right? Is staggering. Mm-hmm. It is. I mean, a lot of it's undoubtedly due to COVID, or ripple effects from that. But the fact that we have the numbers that we do, and that we have them after 10 years of a liberal government that has been nominally about social programs, has been nominally and just throwing money around,
and across jurisdictions,
right?
Like the provinces are the primary administrators of social programs.
Yeah.
So across the spectrum, whether you have conservative-leaning administrations or progressive-leaning administrations, it doesn't seem to make a difference.
No, and so it's in so many ways. I mean, I think this is a societal issue. It's part of what we were discussing by text the other day. It's just like people living in this online age. It's their scope for empathy has been neutralized.
Yeah.
Right. And for those of us who do notice and do care, it's like, just to stay sane, it's like, how much can you pay attention to it? Right? How much? Because you will drive yourself insane. Mm-hmm. But to me, this is a massive indictment of us as a society, but there's no reason, with a liberal government in power for the last 10 years throwing money around, that we should be in this situation. This speaks to the inefficiency of the bureaucracies.
So give me a policy out of that. So extrapolate, not just Canada.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to pull this across let's say the G15, top 15 economies, or the G20. So again, Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, North America. Is there a common thread in policy that you can say, just to use that as a backdrop, say in terms of could we say the welfare state?
Yeah, I would say the welfare state. And again, I see it as, I generally can only use anecdotal
Sure.
experience or examples, right? But I can tell you my son, living in Sweden,
Yep.
right? He's looking at options right now. His relationship.
How old is he?
30.
Oh, so he's well into his adult years. Okay.
He's 33.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, this is my eldest.
He ain't no kid.
No. And he's done well for himself, right? Far more adventurous. So now he's looking at options.
What does he do?
Right now he works at a sci-fi bookstore.
Okay, so he works in the bookstore.
He works in the bookstore.
Okay.
Right. In Gothenburg.
Yeah.
But he's like me. He's got all sorts of interests. So one of his interests is he's a bartender. He's a trained bartender. So he's been a bartender along the way. Right?
Yeah.
Now he's looking at options. He's looking at either IT or business, and he's looking at where to go to school. So he was looking at the UK because he's his mother's British.
Because his mom, he can get into the UK. Yeah.
Right, but he hates the UK.
Right.
He was looking at Canada, maybe coming here for a while.
Because he knows a Canadian.
Well, and in Alberta, so he's looking at going to NAIT.
He talks with one on a regular basis.
Yeah. But Sweden has free schooling for him.
Right. He wouldn't pay tuition.
So again, that just speaks to me. That's an example of how the Scandinavian welfare state, how the Western European welfare states are kind of looking at these things, raise their approach to things. You were talking about something as I walked in, about how there's this schooling system here,
Right. Yeah.
somewhere in Canada,
Here in Edmonton.
and it's worthless, right? Or it should be of more worth,
Yeah. Yeah.
of more
It was
of more value.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because people are taking it and they're finding out they're not qualified
Or-
at the end of the
yeah.
program. They have to take some other
they have to then go somewhere else. Yeah.
but they're paying the equivalent.
Right. Yes.
So again, that to me again speaks to the dysfunction of Canadian
Well,
thinking.
our education. That's for our education system.
Yeah,
Steve's weighing in.
I see a lot of things where people. It's like the Al Gore thing, right? Al Gore wanted a cap and trade system because Al Gore was the biggest investor in the cap and trade market.
Yeah.
Market framework, right?
Yeah.
Like in the cap and trade exchange, right?
Yeah.
So you see a lot of that of people promoting regulations,
Yes.
and then setting up
benefiting from those
and
regulations.
then setting up the organization that certifies you under that regulatory framework, right?
Which you never see on the right. You never see from capitalists. They are never
Because
playing
we're
that
about
game.
deregulation.
Yeah. Well, capitalists do the corporate
They're-
sector loves to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And that they love, like, the companies that call the hardest for regulation.
Are the biggest. Like,
Yeah, because they do so because they see it as a barrier to market entry.
Yeah,
And it's a
'cause-
way to protect themselves from competition.
Like we had this discussion on our text thread a while back
Yeah.
when we were talking about
Yeah.
and I asked the question, like, do you think Mark Zuckerberg is promoting social media
Right.
regulation because he thinks it's going to make it easier for new entries into the social media space,
Yeah.
right? Or to protect himself, right?
So then when I was trying to think of what policies does the left today champion universally? Yeah, the welfare state. And I'm using it as a big tent.
Yeah.
The welfare state was the second one that I could think of.
Yeah.
And that includes wealth redistribution. But, and this is where I want to get Steve's input, that also includes the administrative state. In other words, the goal is not just wealth redistribution, but at least an intent is to subject all matters of life to state regulation.
Okay, you specified you want Steve's input, so I'm going
Yeah.
to bite my tongue at this point.
Yeah. Because this is something I know you got opinions on. Is that just me? Am I looking at that? And is that just my own prism of bias? Or is that a legitimate, is that actually a policy that has been pursued universally across the West amongst the left?
Yeah, I think so, because I think it comes from that point of view that you ascribe to leftists of them feeling that the government is the primary moral actor in these things, right? Like, it's not really, which is not to say it doesn't exist in the West, but like they view that the state should be the one providing social welfare,
right? Not say the church.
Not
the church should not be providing education. It should not be providing social welfare.
Yeah.
The state should be doing this.
Yeah.
I don't think those two are mutually exclusive, but I'm going to go back to your original question. I think I would characterize it as, if as a society, because we have federally two parties that are regularly in power, and they both work within what, as a culture, we've decided is important to us, a welfare state, with variations on that theme. And so in that context, there's a de facto need to administer these programs. Because if the government is going to provide for these programs, then they need to be administered. So that is on its own. That to me isn't saying that that's
and anything that touches upon those programs.
Right. So to me, at that level, that is not a deliberate attempt to administer people's lives for the sake of administering people's lives. That is not an assumption that the government is morally superior, and therefore should be the one doing it. It's like saying we're the ones giving out the programs, contributing to the programs.
So you're seeing it not so much as a benign act, but you're seeing it as an act of, say, absolute necessity, just logical.
Yeah, it's
efficiency.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I hesitate to use the word efficiency because this is where we're going. So I think it's gotten to, and we've seen some ridiculous statistics again.
Or let's just say mechanics. Right?
Over the last 9 years, almost 10 of Liberal government. Yeah. The size of the civil service in this country has grown ridiculously. Yeah. And since COVID, they've all been sitting at home, and now none of them want to go back to the office. And every service that they provide, 100% of the services provided by the federal public service is in backlog. Yeah. Right? It's just...
And this is not an exclusively Canadian problem.
No, but...
You're seeing this across the West.
Yeah. Now, where I will agree with you, taking the... Now, it's become a matter of policy to try and administer people's lives for the sake of it. I think we've gotten to that point. And we did reach a watershed at some point where, and I've argued this a number of times, we're in this vicious circle right now. We've got a society of individuals who are completely inept at critical thinking, showing any sort of wisdom or empathy
or analysis. Or,
just completely incapable. So now I can't turn right on a red fucking light.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Welcome to Quebec. I mean...
Yeah.
So... And so that's where it has gotten to that point. Now it's government saying, we can't do even coming here. Right? There's a 30 k per hour speed limit going past a playground that no kids are in.
Right.
And I got this flashing sign saying you're going too fast because I'm 5 kilometers over that limit.
Oh, yeah, that sign is crazy.
Right?
That will flash at you at 1 kilometer over.
Yeah. It's nanny state with a capital N.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? When we were growing up, and I'm getting used to being, back in the day, when I was your age, right? I am now that guy.
Goddamn
right?
kids. Loud music. Can't hear Matt Law.
The ads we were seeing, the advertising, the posters that were up in schools was, don't run out in the street after your ball.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because
cars are coming. Yeah.
The onus was on the individual to learn not to do the things that were going to get them hurt.
Yeah.
And now that's where we have gotten to. It's like my responsibility to make sure no one, if someone does something stupid, I'm not going to hurt them.
I was reading somewhere about a trend of that over the last, say, starting from the last half of the 20th century on today. And I guess it ties to our conversation in that a goal of the left was to see, maybe not a goal, but a tendency, was to see systemic causes for all problems, systemic and societal causes. And there has been in pursuing problems through that, say, channel, there has been a simultaneous decrease in individual responsibility.
Absolutely.
And by taking away individual responsibility, to take away individual agency, and then instead view responsibility as a societal or collective problem. And then solutions must therefore be societal and collective.
See, I think part of the thing is, like, technology is, like, I'm looking at the like, say, the enforcement arms of government, right? As technology advances, government enforcement actually becomes more effective because they're able to infiltrate their technology. I use the example,
collect more and better data.
Collect more and better data, exactly. And I use the example of, for my industry, from trucking. I maintain that once we switched from, and it wasn't switching necessarily from paper logbooks to electronic logbooks, is once we put what called in the electronic data logger. So now the logbook was connected to the engine control module of the truck. I pulled the number out of my ass. I said, look, we're basically going to see a 20% reduction in service across the board. Because when we could cheat, like, the entire economy since the invention of heavy-duty trucking in essentially the 1910s, essentially thrived on the fact that truck drivers were cheating on their logs.
Right.
Right.
They're driving more hours than they should have.
Yeah, it's universal. Because you would, when we had a paper log or an electronic log not connected to the ECM, you would, okay, well, I was driving from, it is 450 kilometers from Edmonton to Grand Prairie. I was driving for 4.5 hours.
Right.
Not 5.5 hours.
Right.
Right. And so then I saved hours. Or then I could go further. So say I had to go to Dawson Creek. And
you could squeeze in.
You could squeeze in a little bit extra, right?
Yeah.
And then you could go review. And then, I mean, the cheating on paper logs was legion. Like, I mean, like, guys running US, running all highway, where you're basically burning all your hours every day. Guys would run 3 different logbooks. Right? So, this one's, we're max on hours on this one. We go back to this one that says we started here 3 days ago.
Is that necessarily a bad thing, though? That now everyone is actually being compliant with the law?
Because this is where we talk intent, right? I've actually got some... I've been meaning to talk to you about trucking recently.
So intent... Yeah, the problem is the law is the law well designed? Okay. So in 2006, both Canada and the United States made significant modifications to their hours of service rules. And the United States' were more significant than Canada's. But one of the big things was in both jurisdictions, but Canada's got a way to kind of get around it. In both jurisdictions, they said, okay, once you start your day in the morning, you're done 14 hours later. Boom. Unless you get 2 hours of breaks with no less than no break if you less than a half
conditions.
Hour. The American system was okay. So that was the Canada. In the U.S., there was not that break. Once you start, you're done 14 hours later.
Breaks or not.
So then you got guys driving. So if a guy has to say takes his 8 hours off because the shipper's screwing around, so he manages to get his 8 or 10 hours off while he's waiting at a shipper. Which probably isn't technically legal under U.S. law, but anyway, they do. But then, okay, well, you're finally loaded at 8 o'clock at night. He's got to drive. He started. He's got to use those hours. So now he's driving overnight when his circadian rhythm was set up to be on a day shift, right? Or just he's got to drive, or he can't take a break. In that drowsy period just after lunch, right? You can't, because he's got to use those hours for driving.
Use his hours,
right? Because remember, truckers aren't paid by the hour, or long haul truckers paid by the mile.
Paid by the trip,
usually by the mile.
Or by the mile, okay.
So it's so now you do have guys driving when they're tired when they should
Yeah.
be, whereas when you had when you could just write it in the logbook, like and under the rules previous to that, you
Yeah.
could stop anytime during your shift, have a nap, do whatever,
Yeah.
get up and carry on. You only just couldn't see
Yeah.
these hours in a 24-hour period, right? So the Canadian system is a little better, but so the regulations now you have to strictly enforce those regulations, but the regulations have flaws.
Yes.
Well,
Right.
they always do, right?
Yeah.
But it comes down to, for me, it's always
Yeah.
balancing
But-
the
well,
intent
actually-
because something has to be done.
But the so in North America, but specifically in the United States, since 2006 when they implemented those regulations, accidents involving trucks went up.
Right. Sure. I can
Significantly.
see why.
And then once the ELD, the electronic portion was
Yep.
implemented, they started to go up again.
Why? What's the cause effect relationship there?
Well, because back in 2006, you could still fudge your books.
Yeah.
Right.
But you said that the guys were accidents started going up when
Yeah.
they changed that
When they changed the hours of
law.
service
And
regulations.
so what we can probably attribute that to is that guys were paid by the trip.
Yeah.
So they're driving like they got to make the most of those 14 hours. So they were driving when they were probably tired.
Yes.
Okay.
But now-
so how did the electronic?
Well, because the electronic means
collection-
there's no fudging anymore. Because the electronic data system,
Yeah.
it changes the duty status for you. So it knows when your truck is driving, right?
Okay.
Before the electronic data collection, you could say, well, we were driving here when we weren't driving, or we weren't driving here when we were driving.
We get all that. So,
But now that you
that-
put the data collection in,
I don't
It's
understand
accurate.
how that makes it worse.
so how does that lead to
Yeah.
more accidents at this point?
Yeah.
well, because there's no when there was fudging, you could take a nap or something.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay, you could take a nap.
But
when your
now
book said you were
that the
driving.
logbook says, okay, you're driving because we can tell the truck is moving.
So if I've got say 14 hours, I could take a nap for 2 hours
Yeah.
and then drive
Then-
2 hours past my 14
Yeah.
because I could fudge it in my log.
Because you could fudge it in your
And
logbook.
you'd
right?
still be within.
right, and I'd still technically
log-
be compliant.
And your logbook would leak.
You'd
Yeah,
be,
my
you'd-
logbook
and you'd
would
be
be
living
compliant.
with the intent.
right.
Yeah.
But now with the electronic, I can't do that.
No.
So I got to push through that 14 hours.
If you're
whether I'm
stopped,
tired
you
or
can't
not.
you can't put yourself as driving if you're stopped, right?
Right.
Because the truck knows.
Okay, so I got to drive that 14 hours whether I'm tired
Yeah.
or not.
And part of it is a cultural thing. Now the Europeans have been, because the European log system
Mm-hmm.
is actually a TAC card, and it's been controlled by the truck for years, so they're
Mm-hmm.
culturally more attuned to it. But their hours of service are different. That they can,
Yeah.
their hours of service require more breaks,
Right.
and I think they can.
Yeah,
They don't have the same
They're
length of
not
time.
as rigid as the American
Yeah.
system of 14 flat.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
and they've also got more rest stops closer together
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
more amenities to them.
Yeah.
and they
that's
drive, and they fucking drive slow. Those guys, Jesus.
Yeah.
They have to. I mean,
Well, yeah. Look at the trucks. Yeah.
if
So this is the thing. I realize that trucking is a massive part of our economy, right? Just like rail is, right?
yeah,
But they both drive me fucking insane. And present company aside, and maybe Mark from the regiment.
Yeah.
Well, we've got two Marks from the regiment who are in the trucking business.
That's
Wanker.
true.
Right. Yeah.
Wanker the tanker yanker.
Yeah.
as he calls himself.
He driving truck now?
He always has.
He always has. He
He
had
does
brief,
it part time.
He had that brief stint at Solomon. But
Yeah. Well, okay.
they drive me insane, right? So there's the nuisance factor, right?
Of the
There's-
truck just being there.
Yeah, just
The
being
mere
there, being
existence.
so slow and fucking taking forever to get through, and blocking left turns and 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 passing each other on the highway. Fuck off! If you're behind another truck, stay the fuck there because that's where you belong. The left lane is for cars; it's for other people.
No left lanes for passing.
Yeah, and if you're going 1 kilometer an hour faster than the other truck, fuck you. Right?
I get that that's annoying, but
Wow.
So
there's
I-
some road rage.
But
here's my response to you
okay,
on that one, on that issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 1 kilometer, I get the 1 or 2 kilometer an hour passing. That's really annoying. And
especially if you're about to come up to a hill and then you realize, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
yeah, I get caught up by that too. But the thing is,
Well, fuck you too.
Wow.
the thing is,
Wow.
Okay, so when you're forced to slow down from your 110 to the 101 that the truck
Yeah.
is doing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
once you pass the truck, how long does it take you to get up to 110?
No,
Seconds.
yeah.
Seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
The truck
Yeah.
takes a minute and a half.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
right?
Great. So you two truckers talking to you guys used to have CBs and talk, hey, rubber ducky, get the fuck out of and put your foot down, right?
This is gonna sound really, really racist. But one, there's
What a Karen.
no, not many people have CBs anymore, or working CBs.
I got good news for you. That's not racist.
And no, but here's the second part that says there's a
language barrier?
There's a language barrier.
Yeah.
English
can
is
see
not
that.
the first
Actually,
language for a
so-
large number
Yeah.
of truck drivers anymore.
Yeah. I get
That
it.
leads me to my next point, right? So
You're rubber ducky. Put your foot down.
So there's the nuisance factor, but there's the fucking danger factor, right? So and there was a time, sometime in the last 12 months, I can't remember exactly. It wasn't winter time. I think it was as a Sunday, and it wasn't coming here because Karen was in the vehicle, but we were coming up to a traffic circle. Got into the traffic circle, and it was a Sunday morning, so traffic was light, and this fucking tandem cement truck
B trainer. Oh, okay.
just comes rolling right in, doesn't yield right of way. If we had been going as normal and not paying attention with right of way, we would have been killed by this fucker,
Yep.
right? And he came barreling up to that intersection with not a care in the world that he might have to fucking yield. And there are examples upon examples upon examples, but that's been the most blatant one, right? And so every time the cops hit me, every time I get hit with a fucking speeding ticket, and actually I'll go to the extreme example, right? Mother's Day fucking 2009,
Yep.
8:30 a.m., residential area,
Yep.
four-way stop, not a pedestrian in sight, no
slow
moving
rolled it?
vehicles in
Yeah.
sight. I stopped for apparently
Yeah. Not long enough.
fewer than 3 seconds. Next
Yeah.
thing I know, there's a cop. That was a $320 ticket
Yep.
in 2009.
Yeah.
Right?
He must have been behind on his quota. He needed somebody.
Yeah, I know, or maybe he didn't have a mother. Or maybe he figured I was one of the only people in the province who had a job back in 2009 after the 2008 implosion, right?
Yeah.
But I fooled him. I got laid off the next month, right? But it's okay, folks. I'm almost over it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
No, it's like I see people pulling illegal U-turns
Yep.
into oncoming traffic with a cop coming the other way, right? And
There's a lot
so-
of individual discretion on the police officer who chooses to enforce that.
well, we've had
And
so I've
cops who
spoken
don't.
to some
Yeah.
cops who are members of the regiment,
Yeah.
right? And they've told me they FIDO it, fuck it, drive on, right?
Yeah.
But I'm getting sick and tired of this, right?
Yeah. Like I've met cops, and the one who said to me was, "I didn't become a police officer to harass people for like not fully stopping at a four-way stop.
Yeah.
That's not what I joined. That's not what I decided to
Yeah,
become a police
apparently
officer
there's
But
at least one exception to
I
that
have met,
attitude.
and I will say, I don't know, maybe this
That
is
was 15
anecdotal.
years ago. I mean, he may not be anymore.
This could be because I
Yeah, he's probably
predominantly
retired with a really nice
Yeah.
pension.
Maybe it's because I predominantly meet municipal police officers.
Yeah.
And not just Edmonton, but say Calgary and Camrose more than RCMP. Well, actually, no, I do meet more RCMP than I do those other two municipal services. But it does seem to be there's a difference in philosophy between, say, those municipal forces and the RCMP. I find RCMP, like say when I go to St. Albert, are more likely to enforce moving violations.
Oh yeah, I mean, I just spent a week and a half on the road.
Yeah.
And yeah, there were Mounties everywhere.
I want to come back to this. I think there's going to be an opportunity to come back to the whole trucking thing and the drop in standard of trucking.
Yeah.
Before I deliberately try and change the subject, I want to leave you guys with just something to think about, and quick agree or disagree. When I was a kid, truckers were considered the best drivers on the road, and I remember being a child and listening to discussions amongst the adults in my family about how truckers were considered, like heavy long haul truckers were considered the consummate driving professionals.
Yeah, that was actually wrong. The best guys on the road were the truck drivers doing pickup delivery in cities every day.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I can see that. But now
But I understand that
you will not find that consensus or that convention anywhere.
Yeah.
And the conversation is now flipped.
Yeah.
that a lot of long haul truck drivers are the worst. Well, not just long haul, any truck drivers.
Yeah, any
whether
truck
you're driving a gravel truck, whether it's like a B train hauling grain, whether it's a reefer, anything. You see a semi, watch out, because that guy probably doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Fair or unfair, would you say this is the convention?
I'd say, yeah, I agree with both those statements.
Steve, tell me why I'm wrong.
With that about
No,
the
you
perception
said
or
we
about
The perception.
We weren't going to discuss whether or not. You just agree or disagree. There was no tell me why.
I stand corrected. Would you agree that this is the conception? This is the perception.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I mean, everywhere I go when I talk to
We're
customers and clients and stuff like that, they, you know.
I'm going to circle you guys back to that before this day is done.
Yeah.
Okay, so one other policy.
But anyway, yeah. So I just want to say
Okay.
my whole point to that is that the increased penetration of regulation and enforcement is just creating a drag
Right.
on
Has not
economies.
had the intended effect. Or has had unintended consequences.
Has unintended consequences, I think.
Yeah.
Of like, you know, because people are always incentivized to try and make their business work as efficiently and
Yep.
better. And so if you're fudging logbooks or you're fudging,
Yep.
you know, and maybe you're fudging environmental data or something
Yeah.
like that, or on disposal data or something like that, and that's you know, there's bad stuff. But people are always incentivized to try and keep their business,
Yep.
and they still are.
Yeah.
But as the regulation is able to become more strict through technical
Yeah.
means, it creates a big. We're starting to see like what a drag
Yeah.
on economic activity and functioning that it creates.
Well, I've got a couple of things to say,
Yeah.
if you don't mind. I mean, you're absolutely right. But from the ops leadership point of view that I keep pushing and stuff, my experience is that is so incredibly short-sighted. If you get the proper culture, you're going to get good efficiencies and good people working towards those efficiencies, right? And you can achieve better results by not trying to play the rules, right? The other thing I was going to say is, taking a step back.
But then because just to push back is the question is, are there more rules now or less rules than there were
Say 60 years ago?
30 years ago?
I would say this.
So I am gonna. So with my next pair of points, like I'm going to agree with you on that concept, right? Because I've always felt it's tragic. I remember reading. It was an anthropologist who was saying that it's tragic that men are being portrayed the way that they are as toxic and
Yeah.
patriarchy and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Because it was in a lot of ways considered kind of the men's a male thing, and we can't even discuss things in those terms anymore. But to go out and try shit, right? Like, so Columbus looking for
Risk-taking.
looking for
Yeah.
sailing west, looking for the
Yep.
looking for American, bumping into a whole new world. The lists are endless, right? And I've thought about that too. If you go back 100 years, and I think I've said this before, we used to be climbing the rigging in sailing ships. We used to be running along the tops of moving trains, jumping from car to car.
Yep.
We used to, and you see it in that vignette of the log driver's waltz.
Yeah.
Used to
ride logs down the river.
logs down rivers.
And that's how you deliver them to the mill.
That famous photograph of the iron workers sitting on a beam,
Yeah.
eating lunch.
Yeah, when
in
they're
New
building the
York,
import
yeah.
steel.
Yeah.
And so, and naturally, there would have been some. So on the
Which
one
makes
hand,
me dizzy every time I look at it.
Yeah.
on the one hand, so you had these men. It could have been women.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
had these people
Yep.
who had this self-confidence and this ability to achieve under extreme circumstances that they didn't consider extreme, right?
Right.
And we've completely lost that, right? I mean, hell, I used to go to the PNE every summer when I was in Vancouver, and you'd see those guys having competitions rolling logs. You don't see that at the PNE anymore.
Yeah.
But here's
Well, like the lumberjack king of the Klondike and stuff like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I went looking for some statistics. I said, I Googled like rate of industrial accidents, 1924, because that's exactly 100 years ago. And per capita, there was at least one category, and I think it was forestry accidents.
Yeah.
Right. The per capita, the rate is the same.
Oh, as it is now and
Yeah.
back then? That's how very interesting.
It might have been even.
I wouldn't have expected
it might have
that
been
at all.
higher, right? But I'm just like
Or
because
you
this-
feel it was not statistically significant. Like it was not really
yeah, it
worth-
was in the ballpark,
Yeah.
right? Like it was kind of
Like you would have thought that our modern emphasis on health and safety would have moved the needle a little
Yeah.
further.
Yeah, but it hasn't.
It
Like,
Well, it
how very
hasn't-
interesting.
the great test case
Yep.
is ask people how many people they think died in the construction of the Empire State Building.
I just only 24, wasn't it?
There's zero.
Really?
Nobody died
Oh,
during the
wow.
construction.
I had heard that.
no-
that there was some crazy death rate.
Nope. Nothing.
Wow. how
Nobody
very interesting.
died.
So that's an urban myth.
Yeah.
How very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there was not to say that there were no accidents and people were injured, but nobody died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But,
because there was
but-
a level of personal self-expectation.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean,
And I'm responsible for my safety.
a lot of things where you were used to be accountable have moved to like hardware solutions, especially in the safety environment. Hardware solutions for
Yes.
software problems, kind
Yeah.
of thing, right?
Well, like I said, all problems are seen as societal and systemic.
yeah.
There's no individual accountability. This is a path we have been moving on
Yeah.
in conjunction with the welfare
I would-
administrative state.
I was listening to Quirks and Quarks this week, and they were talking.
Whoa.
Yeah, I do every once in a while when there's an interesting subject.
CBC?
Oh, the podcast. I don't turn in the radio.
Why do you?
Yeah, they do Quirks and Quarks as a podcast. But
Always,
anyway,
always
still-
an excuse. All right.
trust him.
anyway, so Bob McDonald was talking. The host was talking to this scientist from NASA JPL
Yep.
about an upcoming there's a mission to Europa, the moon
Yep.
surrounding Jupiter.
Yeah.
Right. And so some of the things, right? And so part of the conversation moved on to like possible manned missions and stuff like that. And she was like talking, I hope so. But then she said, and for some reason the Apollo program got referenced, and this woman who worked at JPL said she was in no way comfortable with the number of risks they took during the Saturn, the Apollo program.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, the Apollo program was like one of the safest. I mean, like it's
Yeah.
not to say there were no.
In comparison to
No, but they really focused
okay.
on safety
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
survivability on the
Yeah.
Apollo missions to a degree like probably unseen in
Yeah.
American life prior to that point, right?
right.
You know, but
In the
it required
context
risk.
of the 1960s. Yeah.
Well, when you consider the number of missions they had.
Yeah, I mean, like so. The whole program from like Mercury Gemini up to there were deaths and they had problems, but they really did. I mean, they really had.
Which one was Gus Grissom? And,
That was a Gemini.
was it Gemini? I thought
It was Gemini.
I thought it was early Apollo.
No, I think it was a Gemini capsule. There was three.
What happened?
Oh no, maybe it was Apollo because there was three of them in the capsule. I think Gemini was only a 2-man capsule.
Yeah, it was. There was.
It might have been Apollo. Yeah.
There was a fire at
Yeah.
takeoff.
Oh,
It's-
right.
it's-
At ignition,
Yeah. Well, it wasn't-
and they couldn't get out of the capsule in time.
It wasn't even
Was that Gus Grissom?
Gus
Gus
Grissom
Grissom.
and
That's the name I always remember.
yeah. Grissom. For some reason, Grissom's name is the one you always remember.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a launch. It was just a test.
Yeah.
And so what happened is this is what caused NASA to change things because what happened is their capsules they were using pure oxygen atmospheres in the capsules,
Yeah.
right? And so then they had a short.
Right. And that sparked.
And that sparked the fire
Yeah.
inside the capsule. So then they switched to nitrox.
Right.
And they couldn't get out.
Yeah. They couldn't get
There
out.
was
Yeah, I don't know if they're supposed to both
there was a
on the-
failure of the escape hatch.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
Anyway.
Oh, one more. Sorry.
I need to go for a slash. So
Okay. Let's pause.
We'll pause. All right, we're back, and hopefully that break get us off our digression back on track to what we're actually talking
Trent,
about. as
Trent
opposed to-
wanted one more thing on. I think it was trucking. You wanted to talk about.
No, I'm good for now.
Okay.
Okay,
So
we'll come back to it, and you'll carry
Yeah,
on.
you said we're going to circle back to it. So
yeah. So give me another policy, and again, this is the first one that came to me, and so I think it's right up there with the welfare state. What has been a universal goal of the left or universal policy path of the left in the Western world?
Well, I think we've pointed out before, like especially if you look at Western Europe.
Yep.
It's the standard of living,
Okay.
the minimum standard of
Okay.
living, right?
And so we've talked about that.
Right.
Give me another one.
No,
which
but-
is really
but
closely
I'm-
related. Like I'm aiming for something here, but I want to see if you guys.
Well, I was just going to bring up the mere fact that people get way more holiday time in Western Europe, right?
But is that universal? Has that been followed across, say, Australia and New Zealand, like the Anglosphere?
No, it's
Right.
definitely not.
So
in
I
North
don't think
America.
we should count that.
Okay.
Just because I'm looking for universality. Healthcare.
Well, no, because that's not universal either.
Yeah. The state regulation of healthcare has been universally followed. Now, at
It
the one
depe-
extreme, you've got like systems like Canada and the United States, or Canada and the UK.
Well, no, because UK has gone to 2-tier.
Well, they were always kind of two-tier, but they
Right,
have
and
been steadily trying to
we-
achieve that Canadian monopoly.
We fight 2-tier here, and you know, as the token leftist here, I think we have to be looking at 2-tier. And fascinatingly, I think it was on my drive from Regina to Medicine Hat. Yeah, I was because I was still in Saskatchewan. I was listening to some talk radio, and they were talking to a doctor who had opened a private clinic in Saskatchewan, and he said it was, and he gave two very good examples of patients who had benefited from him being a private system. And I thought it was fascinating.
So you would disagree? You would say that has not been a universal pursuit of the left from Australia to Finland?
I would say it is, and it's an honorable one.
Yeah, yeah.
But it is no longer, like so many things, is no longer being practically considered.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, we need to be able to look at it, like from the trends, is like from obesity, for example.
Yep.
Right. Everyone's still hammering away at the fucking smokers. Fuck you, all of you. Right. Get off.
First the truckers, now the anti-smokers.
Get off your high horse. Right. The revolution's over. You won. Right. Actually,
Basically, Trent is get out of my way and pay for my lung cancer treatment.
Yeah.
I did a couple of things I want to follow up on, so just
Oh,
bear
yeah,
with me here.
let her rip.
You know what I Googled? Because I'm going to Paraguay next
Yeah.
Monday,
Okay.
right, for 2.5 weeks.
Yep.
Right? First thing I Googled, how much does smokes cost in Paraguay?
Yeah.
Right? 33 cents a pack US.
Wow.
That's 50 cents Canadian. And I'm like, okay, I can bring back 2 cartons legally, and so
Now,
can Karen,
what
right?
cigarettes do they
It-
make
it- it's
there? Is it their own thing, or can you buy?
I don't know. It says the standardly domestically bought.
Okay.
Right? Now, it also says that
I think
apparently Paraguay has such a glut in cigarettes, they're flooding
Oh wow.
the South American market with cigarette smuggling, right? They've got so many that Paraguayans can't smoke them all. So
Is Paraguay part of the Triple Frontier? Because that's Brazil.
yes, it
That's
is.
Paraguay, Brazil, and Colombia.
And Argentina.
Argentina.
They all have a common
Customs
identity
union
card.
kind
In
of thing?
fact,
Okay.
one of the things Karen's going to do when she gets down there is renew her card.
Okay.
It's like it's like a government identity card for all 3 countries.
Right. Like kind of like a Schengen area for
Yeah.
South America.
Yeah. So, it allows her to get across borders.
Yeah, yeah.
Me,
Okay.
fuck knows as a Canadian what's going to do.
Yeah.
for
Who
me.
knows? Yeah.
What was the other thing? Fuck, I had another thing I want to say.
I don't know. You want?
So Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Again, a fascinating clip the
Yeah.
other day. He was talking about how criminal it was that back in the 60s or
Mm-hmm.
70s, whenever it was, that we went from 16 food groups to 4, and grains was one of them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because experts at the time were saying this is going to lead to an obesity problem. What do we have a generation later?
An obesity problem.
And that's why I'm like, get off your high horse, stop picking on the smokers, right? Obesity is now the problem. You're not doing fuck all about it, right? The worst example I saw, I was down at the ledge in around the fountains, and kids were splashing around the pools. There was a family feeding a baby Coke from a baby bottle. I'm like,
Damn.
that's fucked up. like this is the ridiculous society we live in right now, right? So,
All right, Steve.
Excuse me while I take a hit off my Pepsi.
What are you thinking here? Like so.
As universal leftist.
Yeah, that it's been a real goal. Like
I'd say it is.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just
like
Oh yeah, for sure. Healthcare. Universal
Canada
healthcare
went
has been-
extreme.
yes,
but like there's like 2 other countries in the world that made private healthcare illegal. Canada's being only one of them.
what's the other one?
I think North Korea and Cuba, so far as I know. I don't know of any other state that makes private healthcare illegal other than those two.
Yeah.
So, but every country...
Well, apparently Saskatchewan doesn't either. I was kind of surprised.
Well, we do have private clinics, like eye clinics and such like that.
Yeah.
But anything that, like, you cannot have a private hospital.
This guy was a cardiologist.
But he can't do any kind of treatment, can he? And does he still bill Saskatchewan Healthcare?
Probably.
Because a private practice...
No, his emphasis was on... He had an interesting take on it. It was on the individual workers. So he's speaking to workers.
Yeah.
He's saying workers are the lifeblood of our economy.
Yeah.
And their private medical insurance through their employers is a very important thing.
Because that's
Yes.
illegal under the Canada Health Act.
Well, what's illegal
You
under
cannot
the,
have private health insurance.
well, you can, but your problem is the private health insurance because it's the benefits, right? But the what the Canada Health Act says is that the private medical insurance cannot cover things covered by the state health insurance.
Yeah.
Right?
There you go. That's
so your private health insurance can cover dental, you can cover
or like
your eyes or
physiotherapy, massage therapy.
So this is what I'm wondering, because what this cardiologist was talking about was providing service. So the patient he uses as the example was feeling very lethargic, and kept going to his physician, his GP, and GP sent him for
some tests.
scans.
Yeah.
Scans of the heart.
Yeah.
Right. Ultrasound. I can't remember. It's not CAT scan.
Or whatever it was, yeah.
Cardiogram.
Yep.
And they found nothing. Right. This guy came to him and said, "You're my last chance." Right. I'm
Yep.
so fucked up.
Yeah.
And this guy arranged another exact same test, but knew what to look for. Right. And found that the guy's the lining around his heart had atrophied.
Okay.
Right. And needed to be removed. And so got him into open heart surgery and got that removed. And the guy was like the next day after having this surgery, which is incredibly painful recovery, the guy was saying, "I've never felt better in my life."
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that to me speaks to, I don't know. Is this guy pushing the envelope? Is he poking the bear here?
Maybe. He might
Right?
be.
Because it sounds like from what you guys are saying that what he's doing, he shouldn't be.
Well, to get, like, I don't
want to get this guy in trouble.
Yeah,
you know?
I don't want to go into the well, obviously. I mean, he's obviously in compliance with the law.
One would assume.
Yeah, he's if he's working outside the boundaries of the system, like, you know, that's you want to go to jail fast. Fuck with Canadian healthcare. Like, if you want to lose your license to practice real fast, you know, go color outside the lines. So I'm not too worried about that. But what I wanted to say was, it seems to me that when we look at the ascendancy of the left, say from the 1930s onwards, this was a major drive across all jurisdictions to universalize healthcare. And again, it should be not just regulated by the state, but offered by the state. That all of these countries have a certain amount of publicly funded health care. And now it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Denmark is a little bit different than Finland. You know, New Zealand is a little bit different than, say, Norway. But again, the United States and Canada are kind of outliers. Although the United States is not as much of an outlier as we may think, in that one of two of the biggest providers of healthcare are the United States government.
Yep, in two systems.
Medicare and Medicaid and the Veterans Administration, right?
Yep.
Whereas Canada is also an outlier in that we have almost exclusively a state monopoly.
Yep.
But set those outliers aside, in the majority of cases, this has been a very, very high priority for the left.
Yes, as
Am
it
I wrong
should
on
be.
that?
I think it again, it speaks to that quality of life, that minimum basic quality of life we're looking to ensure for all our people. But again, I come back to one of my earliest statements, which is, you know, especially from the mental health point of view, we've got all this homeless wandering around. This is a failure of the system, right? Anyways, carry on.
Okay, so then now I'm going to get a little bit more controversial.
That doesn't sound like you at all.
I know. How about delegitimization of the state? Or delegitimization, not of the state, delegitimization of Western culture. This strikes me as something that has been, it's much more recent. The welfare state and healthcare are kind of like the OGs.
Are we talking about just Western culture? Or are you thinking more specifically like the family?
Western culture in a broader sense, but the family is a part of that.
Right.
Now,
Delegitimization of the family is definitely a part of that, but also the entire, if you want to go on a macro level, the entire inheritance of the Enlightenment. Now, we've already talked about how we've sought to, we collectively have sought to decrease the emphasis on the individual and more emphasis on the collective. That's a part of it.
So here's where my mind went when you said that. There was a text string from a couple of days ago. I think I was still on the road. And it pertained to what was being expressed at the pro-Palestine movements. Is that what we're talking about here?
That's a part of it, yeah. Like the idea that the West, as a whole, from Australia to Finland,
Yeah.
racist, colonialist, oppressive.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just that's just part of woke rhetoric.
Is
right?
it not the zeitgeist of the times, and is it not universal? Is it not championed across the board by the left?
Yes, at the moment it is.
Yeah.
The new left.
The new left. So it's over the last, say, 40 years.
No, we're talking the last 5 years.
Really?
5 to 10.
You'd say, oh, really? Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I would say 40 is too long a timeline for that.
I would.
10 might be too short.
I'd say, definitely from the 80s, 100%.
No,
100%.
no, that's because that's when the revolution was still ongoing, the 80s, right? Gay rights.
Yep.
We're still talking about civil rights for
Yep.
minorities.
Well, I'd say that came out of the 60s.
Equal rights
Yep.
for women. But
Yep.
those battles were
Yep.
still ongoing in the 80s,
Okay.
right? The one that was just poking its head up at the time was gay rights.
Yeah. At the 80s, yeah.
But yeah, those were all occurring at that time. But if what you're talking about, like colonialism, to me is just no, it's the new patriarchy,
Okay.
right? It's just another slogan being thrown around, right? We're using it generically, simplistically. It's being used to just kind of point at something and say, I feel like picking on this right now, picking this apart, and labeling someone this at the moment. Like you see it in it complicates the Middle Eastern discussion right now. By I don't want to get. I think we do have to do another episode on Israel and Gaza and now Lebanon. I don't want to get into that too far, but just, and Israel's not doing itself any favors, like from a colonization point of view, right? But it's, to me, these are just, again, it's just sloganeering. That's what the left is these days, the new left. So that's why I'm saying the last 5 years or so, right?
And would you kind of agree with that? Like I see it as much more long term. Trent sees a much more recent thing.
I know the right has been complaining about it, so I guess maybe it's been there. I think it's maybe definitely come into the fore much more in the last 10, 15 years. Then I think it was...
I think what I'm referring to is the irrationality of it.
Yeah.
That's the last 5
like
years.
I know, like especially like Christians and cultural conservatives were complaining about delegitimizing of the family and in pop culture and stuff like that, right? Like
Because that is much longer term.
yeah,
Like that comes right going back to the 40s. The idea that that children belong to the state, not to the family.
right,
Like on the more radical fringes of it.
yeah,
Yeah, it wasn't mainstream left, but it wasn't discussed. But a lot of the major theorists of the left throughout the 40s and 50s, did talk a great deal about that.
and certainly like
And it was also part of the drive to state control of education.
yeah, and there were some movements. I guess we fringe. Like I know, like delegitimization delegitimization of the nuclear family was a big thing in the Black Panthers.
Yep.
As an example.
Yep.
Really?
Oh yeah, they were dead set against it.
Yep.
They thought a nuclear family was a horrible thing.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know if they expressed it as because it was a white thing or a Western thing, but they were dead set against the nuclear family. And,
Okay.
But
But we agree that it was kind of a universal, it was seen everywhere. This drive has been seen everywhere.
yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's my. I'll
Set
just
the legitimacy aside. Is it a drive? Is it a push from stem to stern?
I think
Like, are we seeing it in all of these jurisdictions?
not. Yes, we are.
Yeah.
Right. This is, and again, this is the social media age. This is the inability to think critically age. The sloganeering age. It's again. I just returned to kind of the last 5 years and kind of go. On the one hand, it's like a movement in search of a cause at all times. And not being able to, and having to have everything be mutually exclusive, right? Like trans rights is I think probably the biggest part of that right now. It's just like, okay,
What do you mean?
well, it's like, okay, there's this thing
Like, it's definitely in North America.
that there's trans, non-binary, and all the language
Yeah.
change that has to come with that, right?
Yeah, I see that as a much bigger force in North America. And yeah, definitely out of the United States. And of course, we're in that blast radius.
Yeah, I suppose.
Much more like you just don't see that debate in Italy. You just don't see that debate in Belgium.
Yeah, well, I think, well,
Yeah.
especially if you look at Italy in particular, I think I think Italy is a very interesting example to use because I think they've had the sexual roles and interactions. They've got a way different take on things
Yes.
than we do.
Yeah.
So yeah,
They like Western Europeans are very like from our perspective, or Patty and my perspective, they can be very leftist, but they have very weird limits on that, right? Using the trans debate as example, like especially transitioning children and stuff like that. In the last couple of years, like the Swedes had a very permissive environment for transitioning children, and very permissive regulations, and the Brits had very permissive regulations, and then the Swedes started to look at their numbers, and they were just like, nope, this isn't working. This is bad. The outcomes they're finding the outcomes are bad, and then there was a big audit of the Tavistock Clinic, which was the primary gender.
Yeah. What is the name of that report in the UK?
I was just heard.
I'm going to look it up while you keep talking.
The CAS report.
Yes, that's got to be it.
So anyway, the CAS report, which was basically an audit of the Tavistock Clinic,
And it was damning.
which was the central, basically the only clinic in the UK that was doing,
That's the name of it. CAS report. Yeah, the
youth
CAS
gender
report.
medicine.
Yeah.
And in the wake of that, the UK, under the Conservatives, I don't know that Keir Starmer is really talking about.
I don't think I haven't heard any talk
revisiting
about,
that, but so the
I haven't
UK
heard any
he's
talk.
got bigger issues going on right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, the UK. So the UK, in the wake of the CAS
Yep.
report, drastically changed their regulations
Yeah.
for
They've moved away from it a little bit. Yeah.
youth gender medicine, and then and of course the Canadian College of Pediatric
Yep.
Medicine
Yep.
said, "Don't worry about it. We're not changing anything. Full steam ahead."
Yeah. Yeah. North America is still,
Yeah.
it's very much on the front burner.
It's weird. I just find it. I don't even know how to explain it, but like European progressives generally seem to have much stronger limits to how far they're willing to go. Whereas like North American progressives will take this idea and we're going to take it right out to the end of the
can be
logical
much
end.
more
Well, yeah. Again,
Yeah.
there's
much more radical.
It's all this mutual exclusivity,
Yeah.
right? It's like, I don't have a lot of time for the Conservatives in this province, right? There's so much going on in the world. I'm not sure what I think of Danielle Smith as a premier. I don't hate her.
Yeah.
I don't love her, right? But I think
that's a reasonable position to have.
characterizing her as, transphobic simply because she's trying to generate some discourse
Yeah.
around, parents
Yeah.
having rights. Like,
Yeah.
like there are so many things that we will not let a child do before they're 18.
Right.
Yeah.
And their parents have some say in that.
Yeah.
Just coming out and saying, okay, well, maybe we should let parents have some
Yeah.
part in this, and
Yeah.
maybe the child shouldn't be making this decision for themselves
Yeah.
as a minor,
Yeah.
right? But that again completely shuts down the conversation. So I think what I'm speaking to what you're talking about, which is again just this vitriolic polarization in North America on almost any subject
Well, it's
you can
just
name.
the transgender issues and just sexuality issues on the whole are a much higher priority in North America. Much higher priority than I think anywhere else across what I'll call the leftist sphere.
Yeah, and I don't want to disenfranchise the trans community.
No, of course
right?
not.
I mean,
No.
there's something going on here. I may not fully grasp it and understand it, but I understand that there's something going on here, right? But you know what?
Yeah, we're not addressing the efficacy or the legitimacy of the issue.
Yeah.
Just saying whether or not it's a big priority.
Well,
Across the board.
I went and Googled. I may have said this before. I went and Googled. Okay, what is the estimated population of the world that is actually trans and binary and stuff like that?
Oh,
right?
for the global?
Yeah,
Well, that'd be a tiny number.
it's like 0.03%.
Yeah, it'd be less than 1% for sure.
Right, 0.03% of the world's population, right, and that is dominating vitriolically.
Oh yeah.
The conversation, and I'm like, no, we have more important shit to pay more and better attention to going on than that. So
Yep. Okay, so on a nice segue, we talked about the UK in the aftermath of the cast review and said it hasn't really, so far as we know, it hasn't really been picked up by the Starmer government because they've got other fish to fry.
yeah,
And I think that's an awesome segue because I would say the number 4, as in a universal policy priority, immigration. Agree or disagree?
That's a trickier one, right? Like Australia's always generally had very strict
This is true.
immigration rules.
stricter than
Very-
Canada.
Much more stricter than Canada. Stricter even probably
But
than the United
who
States.
championed immigration?
The left, generally.
Yeah. Now there has always been a bipartisan side. Like the right has always certain sectors, like the corporate sector, who we think of as the right, has always championed immigration.
We used to think of it as the right.
Yeah, we used to until very, very recently.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
immigration's always been different in North America than say Western Europe. It's been very cultural.
Anywhere else. Well,
and even different compared to New Zealand and Australia.
yes, definitely. But I think I would say that immigration everywhere, the primary, like there's sectors of the right that have been in favor of immigration.
Yeah.
The left everywhere, completely, everybody on board was in favor of immigration. Like there was no sector of the left until very recently that was anti-immigration.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, Steve's right. This is a very complex question, right? Because especially look at the colonial powers, right? So you're looking at Western Europe, Britain in particular.
Yep.
France next, Belgium to an extent, the Netherlands to
Holland,
an extent.
has always been like
Right.
massive immigration, or like really
But because they've
pro-immigration.
but they had these colonial ties.
families,
The UK in particular had the Commonwealth,
Yeah.
right? So now you have a massive, going back 2, 3, 4 generations now of East Indians, West Indians, Africans. Same with France, African and Arabic in particular, right? And these are all issues they're having to deal with.
But why? Here's a question I got. Why is it so important? See, this is something I don't really understand. In that, like in Europe, everywhere, immigration has been like it's really under fire. Like it's really been like in the last couple of years, the narrative on immigration has collapsed, and that it is being openly questioned and challenged in the public sphere, in a way that we've never seen before. And
In our lifetimes.
Oh, ever. Mass immigration is only a phenomenon, say, of the last half of the 20th century around the world. Like North America, or I'll say that the neo-Europes of, say, the big four, Australia, New Zealand, America, Canada, have always had immigration policies.
Yeah.
Australia and New Zealand, theirs was much more restrictive.
Yeah.
America and Canada was like,
more open.
Come one, come all.
Yeah.
Immigration into Europe has only been a factor of the last half of the 20th century. Like there was no immigration to Europe,
absolutely.
say, prior to 1950.
Yeah, unless you include like the Norman Conquest.
Yeah, exactly. And that was not immigration. That was conquest.
Yeah.
Or that was invasion.
Yeah.
So what I don't understand, though, is even though it is, say, like if you look at recent electoral results in, say, primarily in Scandinavia and Germany, it is the hill to die on. And a lot of polities, say around social democrat kind of type, moderate left kind of thing, they, even though it is or say the Labour Party in the UK, it is going to be their electoral death. They are committing electoral suicide, yet they refuse to abandon that policy.
Well,
I don't understand why.
What we have to be careful of when discussing immigration as an issue is what we are making it an issue about, right? I have no time for Alberta proud, Canada proud, white pride, blah, 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 all that bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? It's the mismanagement of the immigration. As we have discussed, the birth rate in this country is too low to progress.
Okay.
Right? So that naturally requires immigration, but it needs to be efficiently administered.
That doesn't take into account that we have 40 years of data on this.
Yes.
And that immigration does not help demographic decline. That the immigrant arrives and immediately the children of the immigrant adopt the demographic or the reproductive rates of the host nation. Furthermore, the immigrant also tends to bring a group of dependents with them, primarily their parents. So it just amplifies. It's the same problem. It doesn't help it. It just puts it on a bigger scale. For every immigrant we're bringing 2.7 seniors. So again, I can understand how in the 1980s, 1990s, we thought that immigration, or we could sell immigration as a solution to demographic decline. But how anyone can honestly say that in 2024, you're just not looking at the facts.
That's what I said, efficiently managed. Right? What you're talking about is obviously inefficiently managed.
Yeah.
The programs that surround that, the policies that surround that.
Like, say, family reunification.
Yeah. Okay, I get it. You want to bring your extended family over here, right? But maybe we need to be reconsidering that. We've also discussed the fact that we bring over these trained people, and we deliberately
don't let them practice.
So we've got one branch of government at the federal level, the immigration level, giving out these what do you call it? A checklist. Saying, do you meet this? How qualified are you? Right? Oh, you've got this degree. We want you to come here. And then at other federal levels or at the provincial level
of the professional association.
Or the professional association. They say, well, we don't recognize this, right?
I don't recognize that.
No, that's fucked up. That's goofy with a capital Goo. I mean, that's you can't be doing that shit. So,
either that
you can't argue that immigration is a bad thing, right? And what else has happened? Well, we've had this housing market that's been out of control for years. I had to sell my house. I couldn't afford it anymore. This was 2015, 2016. I can't remember anymore, right? And my representative at BMO said, Trent, do not do this. You will never be able to buy a house again the way things are going. Right? And she was right.
Did you sell?
I had to. Okay. I couldn't afford it anymore.
Couldn't afford the mortgage.
Right. So, and she was absolutely right. So That was the first signs that the housing market is completely
Not to
out of
interrupt.
control. Yeah.
But what did you do? So you sold the house.
Yeah.
And she said, you're not going to be able to buy a new house.
Yeah.
So what did you do?
I've been renting ever since.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Holy cats.
You know, it was just the employment situation
Right.
was, I was just
Right.
accumulating more debt as I was house poor.
Right. Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha.
So that's what I had to do.
Wow.
Right. So we've had this housing problem. We've allowed all these people to invest in real estate in this country, just driving the prices up and driving the rental rates up. Nobody can afford to live in this fucking country anymore.
Yeah. It's one
Right.
of the most expensive,
Right.
like, especially
And
our major cities. Yeah.
And then people blame immigration because now there's all these immigrants who
Do you
can't
think
afford.
that's not accurate?
I think it's an adjunct to the same problem. It's a collateral issue, right?
So you think it's a contributing factor, but not a significant one?
if I'm saying if the housing problem wasn't an issue, the immigration problem wouldn't be as severe. Like people wouldn't be looking at immigration and going, "Oh, they're driving up the need for housing," right? This country has failed at the municipal, provincial, and federal levels to create housing, enough housing to take in the population that
Yeah, it's.
we need.
But why do you think that is? Like, I mean, again, this is on this podcast. We don't subscribe to univariate causes, but so like in the
we don't what?
no problem.
Do we have to have another glossary episode here?
pretty good. Univariate cause. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Every problem has multiple
Multiple issues,
causes,
yeah.
multiple
Oh,
causes,
yeah,
right?
okay.
There's not one cause, so it's not just immigration. But so as an example, so like in the last couple of years, the government has been importing what 1 million people a year.
About that, yeah.
Yeah, so that's a lot of people into a
That's
country
a huge amount of
that's
people.
under 40 million, but now is
Yep.
just crested 40 million. So that's a lot of people per year.
Yeah.
So that's going to be true. In the wake of the 2008 recession, then Prime Minister Stephen Harper made it much. You had to be. You had to have. How do I say this? You had to meet much
The point
stricter
system, yeah.
stricter criteria to qualify for a mortgage in this province or in this country, right?
Okay, yeah.
Right, like you had to. If you didn't want a CMHC insured mortgage, which is more expensive than a regular mortgage, you had to have, I think, 20% of your.
Yeah, like a higher down payment.
You had to have a bigger
yeah.
down payment, which is harder to afford. So that's going to be part of the cause, right? And then zoning regulations, and which has not been such a problem in Alberta as it is in some other places.
But it is in BC.
It is in BC, and it probably is in Toronto too, right? Because like
Southern Ontario,
in places where like in Toronto can't get any bigger.
Yeah.
So the only place it can go is up or down.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and like.
Fuck Toronto. I don't give a shit about those guys.
Let those
Just
fucking
a- just
let
a
those
big-
eastern bastards freeze in the
Freeze in the
dark.
dark.
Just a big fucking ashtray, that place. No time for it. I cannot stand. I've on my Google News feed, right? News for you.
Yeah.
They're telling
Toronto,
me about
Toronto.
how 2 people died in a crash with a train in Welland, Ontario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's for me, is it?
I-
Like how accurately are you getting your data about me there, Mr. Phone?
On I pay for Spotify Premium so I can download podcasts to listen to on the road without an internet connection, right?
Yep.
And part of the things you're supposed to get on Spotify Premium, or used to be, was no advertisements. Well, that is out the window.
Yeah, it's out the window.
And so in the last, it might have been actually on Quirks and Corks, attached to the CBC podcast, there's these advertisements about a podcast about Mississauga. Like, I can't think of a subject I care about less than the history of Mississauga. right?
Except maybe Ajax, right? I mean, like, who the fuck cares?
I would certainly be more interested in the history of Hamilton than Mississauga.
Oh yeah, I would totally be much more interested in the history of that. Hamilton. I would be interested in the history of, but that's it aside.
Only because it's completely the anti-Toronto.
And well, yeah, in a way, and just like the rivalry between Hamilton and Toronto in football.
Yeah.
Like the different
Go
culture.
Ticats.
Yeah, totally. The culture of Hamilton is like this working class, blue collar, steel town, and then the image of Toronto as what's the blue Bay Street?
Yeah.
As a as a catch-all term for the corporate sector kind of thing, then
Yeah.
I'd be very. And of course, Toronto dominates our discourse to such an extent
I hate
that I would be very interested in learning a bit more about, say, a place like Hamilton.
You know, I hated Toronto coming into this podcast, and you guys have you
made it
guys
worse?
you guys shocked me one episode when you were talking about the Laurentian,
The Laurentian consensus.
yeah, and how their attitude towards the West in general and Alberta in particular is just like you got to keep them down, and I'm
Almost like a colonial relationship.
yeah, and I've had even less time for Toronto since then.
Well,
So we convinced you on the Laurentian consensus. Then.
I'm sorry we have poisoned your
Like I said, I'm all over the place. I'm a left libertarian, gun control fighting, Confederation hating, separatist embracing.
Steve wants a piece. Before we started recording, you said you were talking about the 5 platforms.
Yes.
Did you include gun control in those?
That is number 5.
Okay.
Now, I don't know how universal that is.
Pretty universal on the left.
I think it's. I mentioned that last because I think it is. If anything, if I was gonna pick one that I would say would be the least universal as a priority, I would probably say disarmament of the citizen.
Yeah.
Been a very huge priority in some jurisdictions,
And not so much in others.
and I just don't know. But on the other hand, I would be hard pressed to find a Western European nation that has, say, gun laws, with the exception of Switzerland, with on par with, say, those of, say, the Czech Republic. I know Scandinavia has a bit more permissive.
The Czech
laws.
Republic is gun control wise. It is not that they have no gun control. They
No,
actually have,
they do. It just it's
They
not
have
as
very-
extreme as,
Well,
say,
it's
the Netherlands
their chief gun
or the
con-
UK.
The Czech Republic, as I understand, their chief gun control is a graduated licensing system, and if you meet the licensing requirements, which, as far as I can understand, is a shall issue thing, so you don't have to show like an occupational need.
Yeah.
So if you meet the licensing requirements, you can have full autos.
Scandinavia has a much more robust hunting culture.
Yes.
And so that's affected their
Yep.
their gun control perceptions.
Yeah, like Finland, for example, their gun control is far less strict than Canada. They have a licensing scheme, probably not too dissimilar to like between ours and the Czech Republic. They have like a hunting license, and then there's another license above that if you want to target shoot and stuff. But I mean, you can own stuff in Finland that you can't own in Canada.
Whereas if you look at Canada, New Zealand, the UK, I say the United States in, say, the left in the United States, their pursuit has been total prohibition.
No,
And you kind of have that within a lot of Western Europe.
Nobody has done total prohibition,
It's been their pursuit.
perhaps, but even the UK, in the wake of the shooting in Scotland, where they
Dunblane.
where they banned semi-automatics and they banned handguns.
Yep.
They still have a shooting culture with,
They still allow hunting.
They still have a
Yeah.
licensing system. They
Yeah.
still allow hunting.
Yeah.
They're actually I was listening to something recently this week. They were talking about they're having a lot of issues with deer
Yep.
because there's just not enough people hunting because it's too hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, if you look at the policy platform of Labour and the Lib Dems,
Yeah.
they are in favor of total prohibition.
Yeah.
Same thing with Australia.
But-
You can still have, under certain circumstances, firearms in Australia and
Yeah.
New Zealand. But the goal of Labour in both parties
Yeah.
or both countries has been total prohibition.
Yeah, Australia's system is a little more. They have a national firearms law, but they also have. But the system, the way it works, actually ends up being a little bit more like the U.S. in that there's ownership peculiarity state to state. In Australia.
Yep.
So, like, I think Victoria, where Melbourne is,
Yep.
It's very strict. They want you to show a specified need for owning a firearm.
Yep.
And so basically, if you're not in agriculture, or,
Right.
Yeah, they make it very hard. Whereas like Western Australia, where Perth is very
Not as much.
is much more liberal.
And then you look at places like Canada and New Zealand
Yeah,
or the UK.
yeah.
Where the goal is they're just
yeah.
open about it. We want to ban all firearms. And
Yeah.
if you look at certain aspects, or a lot, like the mainstream now of the Democratic Party in the United States, like Beto O'Rourke, it's hell yeah, we're coming for your AR-15s.
Yeah.
We want everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but again, because there are variances, like we talked about,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how universal a priority gun control has been on the left across the board.
Well, I'd say it's an accurate statement to say that they are.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's just a variation on the theme, right? And a lot of that, again, is going to be cultural.
So you would include gun control in this policy basket?
Not as a uniquely leftist thing. Right now, here we get into murky waters because I know now we're going to get back into the left versus right.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm pretty sure under the colonels in Greece, under the junta in Argentina, under Pinochet in Chile, certainly under Franco, Mussolini,
Oh yeah.
and
Gun control was absolutely
and
a priority
Hitler,
for any dictatorship. Gun control is a priority.
Right. To me, those are right wing.
Okay.
So it's not just a left thing. Now, I think for me, the right, when they're exerting, as a dictatorship, what I call the right dictatorships are exerting control because they don't want a threat to the state.
Right.
The left sees itself as this is
Like a public safety issue?
it's exactly that, right? And that's why it varies. Because if we're talking about the UK, growing up, for me, I mean, the cops didn't even used to have guns. And then it got to the point where some of them had guns and they had to identify themselves as armed police,
Yeah.
right? And so, you know, and if we're talking about the Czech Republic, well, I'd say the Czech Republic, well, first of all, it manufactures guns, right?
But so does Canada.
That's part
So
of
does
it.
Germany.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's more of a
It's a more cultural thing, I think, in the Czech
yeah.
Republic.
It is. It's more
Yeah.
exactly. I'd say. I mean, it's not like they don't have organized crime, but it's not the thing that it is here. They don't have the immigration problems that they have here, or say in France.
Yep.
Right. So it's going to vary from place to place. I'd say even in the U.S., a lot of the moderates on the quote unquote left. It always blows my mind that we talk about the Democrats in the U.S. as left because they're not. They're only left compared to the Republicans.
Well, in the American context, they represent the left.
Yeah, but in so many ways, they are not left in every other way that we discuss the left. They're not the welfare state, you know. Certainly not. They're far more.
They're pretty left.
They're far more capitalist.
They
than the
have
rest
far more resistance. I would say the Republicans are way stronger in the United States than, say, anybody in, say, Holland.
Yeah.
Who in Germany has as much clout to fight for conservative causes as, say, the Republicans?
Well,
The Christian Democrats?
Christian Democrats.
Who we would consider barely conservative in the American context.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're somewhere between our liberals and our conservatives.
Yeah.
Right?
So, like, in the American context, there's no one on the right.
Again, it's always a sliding scale.
But
exactly. Again, when it comes...
It's based on the overall population. So I would say, the Democrats in the United States are just as in favor of all of the policies that the Social Democrats in Germany are, or that the Liberal Democrats are in the UK. It's just that the Liberal Democrats and the Social Democrats do not have the organized and passionate resistance of the American Republican Party. It's not that the Democrats don't want all the things that Western Europe has. It's just they haven't been able to convince the American electorate to give it to them.
Well, I don't think they want them. I don't think as many Democrats want as many things as extremely and as vociferously as even the Christian Democrats or the Lib Dems in the UK, right?
Well,
but they do
on who
want
you
certain
listen to.
things. But if we're talking about gun control specifically, again, I think in a lot of ways they're just trying to have a rational conversation, right? Because everything, and I've said this before, the reason I don't think we need gun control in Canada, but they need something in the U.S., right, is just, I do agree, I've said it before, I agree that it's not guns that kill people, it's people with guns that kill people. And in the U.S., you got a shit ton of people with guns who want to shoot other people, right? That's the problem. Theirs is a social issue, right? What do you do about that? But, and I believe the discussion around the Second Amendment is completely shut down because you can't touch my Second Amendment rights.
Yeah.
But it is completely taken out of context to what the original drafters of the Constitution
and also
and its amendments meant.
There's a failure to identify who is the problem.
Yeah.
Is it your average NRA member that's shooting up the inner city of the United States? No, it's not. It's the criminal element that is causing the problem.
Absolutely.
And it's a failure to properly identify. Like, is it that guy who buys a $2,000 AR-15 clone and then puts another $2,000 worth of accessories on it? He's not the guy going in there and shooting up the inner city.
Well,
He's not the
sometimes
guy-
is. I mean, the guy at the Las
No,
Vegas
it's not.
the guy at the Las Vegas hotel.
Okay,
was
Yeah, sure.
But
he was.
this is
But
part,
again, out of a nation of over 325 million people,
Absolutely.
you're not really identifying the problem.
and this is where we start peeling back the layer of what Steve was saying is multi-causal.
Yeah.
Yes, multicultural,
Right?
Yeah.
multivariate
Yeah.
causes or whatever. Yeah.
Because what we got going on here is that's the type of story that makes the news.
It's true.
Right? American society and the rest of us outside the U.S., when we hear about stuff in the U.S., like the crime violence, the crime gun violence, doesn't even hit the news anymore. Doesn't even register.
No.
It's just taken for granted, right? In the big cities, and when you talk about New York, when you're talking about L.A., gangbangers, just drive-by shooting, all this shit, it's just commonplace. All of our lives we've been hearing about this shit, right? About how the gun deaths per capita in the U.S. are 10 times what they are in the rest of the world. But now you're getting into, okay, why is that?
Yeah.
Why are there criminal elements, right? Now we're talking race. Now we're talking about social inequality. Now we're talking about social programs or lack thereof.
And
right?
we're also, I think we're looking at a very different attitude towards crime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous. It is one of the fundamental. What's that? Jeff Daniels. Is it Jeff? Yeah, it's Jeff Daniels who does that blurb. He's on the news show and he talks about how the U.S. isn't the greatest nation in the world. And
It's a clip that
a clip from a TV show,
Yeah.
right? And he names all these things, and he says, I think the one clip he says is that we have more people incarcerated per capita than anyone else on the planet.
Well,
right?
I'm not so sure about that. Like, I'm pretty sure
It's
Russia
up there.
and China are doing better. And also, that's also because they have just to give context, it's because the United States has the wealth to incarcerate. Most nations don't, and they just kill their criminals.
Okay, fine, but for a country that prides itself on individual liberties,
That's true, but
right?
That's true,
And
But-
racial equality, because those numbers
That's
are
true.
still.
But they also
out of
have
proportion.
rates of violent crime that are just
Exactly.
unthinkable
That's what
in
I'm saying.
other societies.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, so the U.S. keeps portraying itself as the greatest democracy on earth, and this, that, and the other thing, but it's got these significant,
Bizarre
fundamental
anomalies, social
issues
There
that come
was
with it.
there was a clip on two clips I saw recently on YouTube, whereas one guy was walking through Bucharest in the late evening, and there were like these really like this very large. It was a pedestrian mall.
Yeah.
And it was this very large flower garden that was probably maybe 15 meters across and about maybe 50, 60 meters wide.
You can calculate in meters?
Well, it comes from, the military.
I can do
Being
hundreds of
armed.
meters from the range, but that's about it, right?
And, well, that's what it is. I divide like, okay, how far is that to the 100-meter point? So you have this big, beautiful flower garden. And completely unmolested. No garbage. He would show these cafes that would leave their table, like they were closed. It was probably about 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the evening. So it was the daylight starting to fade. And they would just leave their tables and chairs out in front of their establishments without any. And see, he was from New York, and he said, like, there's no way you could do this. You just couldn't. I've seen other clips about American tourists marveling of some of the fully automated convenience stores in Japan, where there's no staff. You walk in, you take the item, you scan it, you automatically pay, and you walk out. Saying that you couldn't have that in America. And then I contrast that with another video I recently saw where a fellow, there's no speech in the video. It's just 9 minutes of him walking through Los Angeles at night wearing a camera. And you're just people watching. And the thing that I noticed the most was garbage everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, there was no obvious criminality going on, but there were obvious signs of public intoxication, drug use, basically collapse of the societal order, collapse of the social contract.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the social contract. I mean, that's when I talk about the homeless. Sorry to interrupt you, but when I talk about the homeless in our neighborhood, it's right. There's a whole bunch of them living along 149th Street. In the between Stony Plain Road and 107th, there's this grassy berm on the
right-hand side,
west side,
on the west side,
and they're living in tents there.
Yeah,
right. And they're all wandering around all the time, and they will cross roads. Just completely block traffic.
Yeah,
they just don't give a shit. And it is that social contract that we're talking about, because they're like, society is doing nothing for me. Right? I don't give a shit about my impact on society. Like all you guys in cars, who cares? I'm slowing you down. Boo fucking who. Right? I'm homeless. I got nothing. You guys mean nothing to me because I mean nothing to you, and I mean nothing to you. Right? Like it's just that social contract you're talking about.
Another clip I saw of news footage where a guy was he broke into a home and he was shot and killed by the homeowner in the middle of a break and enter.
Yeah,
and they interviewed. He was a young fellow. He's in his early 20s.
The shooter or the victim? The quote unquote victim.
Yeah, like the break and enter, the burglar,
the criminal.
Yeah. Tragic, really, just a young life eliminated. And they were interviewing the burglar's sister, who was infuriated by this. But what she said really struck me. She said, like, how do you expect him to get any money? Like, in other words, she was basically saying is like, burglary is kind of his job. Like, that is how he makes his living. Is that really worth killing him over? And it was really illustrative to me that there is a very different societal attitude in large sectors of the United States, of American culture, that, and like most societies, we tend to think stealing is wrong.
Yeah.
Whereas that convention is not permeated throughout the United States. That in some circumstances, yes, stealing is perfectly acceptable.
Well, so now let's.
You can actually find multiple examples of that of that attitude
in the United States or around the world.
In the U.S.,
definitely in the United States, 100%.
Well, I think there's all sorts. Well, I mean,
I've seen like interviews of like same kind of deal. Someone killed in the middle of a. We've got their mother. Same deal.
We've got Walmarts and Targets and Walgreens shutting down on the west coast of the U.S. because of the shoplifting issues.
Yeah, and it's just not seen. And if anything, you get anger towards them. Like, how dare they not allow us to steal from them?
Yeah.
Like, how do you expect me to get things? How do you expect me to have possessions?
At the same time, I think
if you don't just give them to me for free, how am I supposed to get them?
And I think that's, on the one hand, that's part and parcel of this whole individuals with no sense of self-responsibility.
Yeah, I could not give you a diagnosis as to why, but all I can tell you is that it's definitely an American attitude.
But I think
large parts of America.
I think societies need to understand. I think this kind of ties into the conversations we've had about unions too. Is if we're going to recognize that the economy goes through a cycle, and there are going to be depressions, which means unemployment, then we have to understand that you can't just you can't be that dickhead who's going get a job, right? When there are no jobs,
Right. Or jobs are hard to find.
this shit is going to be, and now we're getting into simplistic Les Mis, Jean Valjean shit, right? Went to prison for stealing a loaf of bread to feed his sister's kids,
Yeah.
right? It's hard to argue with that shit.
But is that really what's... Well, I don't know.
Right,
Are we getting really distracted? Because we started talking about gun control. Is this kind of on that
We
thing?
started talking about the left.
Welcome to Radio Free Digression.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, reel it back into gun control. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. The
Is
reason
the
we
United
ended up
States
here
in
is
that situation? Like, are these people stealing? Is this idea of, say, like a tolerance of crime? Is it because, literally, you're stealing a loaf of bread to feed your sister's children? Is that kind of representative of what's happening in the United States?
I don't think it's representative of what's happening, but I think it might be representative of the view, especially on the progressive left, of what is happening, right? Like the progressive left looks at the homelessness crisis as all these people down on their luck. It's economically really tough, and all these people are just down on their luck, and we're just trying to get them a hand up.
Yeah.
And then some people who go in and work with these communities are like, no, we're just tolerating open air drug markets, and these people are largely they just dropped out because they want to be addicted to drugs.
Right.
And
Or that they are there as a result of
they
individual decisions made,
Yeah, but-
not
Yeah.
systemic societal.
But even then, you're talking about, okay, how did they end up in that situation, right? Like it's just, again, there's so many layers to this onion.
Yeah.
And a lot of these attitudes towards crime in the U.S. Again, now we're talking guns and firearms and using crimes in massive urban centers, right? I mean, you're talking about attitudes towards crime. We're talking gang crime, not organized crime. Let's talk about the
lower
gangs,
level. Yeah, lower
right?
level.
That's in some places that is has been ingrained for generations. This is what you do. You either get caught up in the gangs, or you're one of those stronger personalities who manages to break out of it, right? But in so many ways, it's just an accepted thing, and people have to work around it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the United States culturally has always been. I mean, the United States is the most diverse, culturally and ethnically, country in the world. The United States culturally is the most restive country in the world, right? And it's the most individualistic society in the world. And all those things kind of combine together to. Those things have good aspects and they have bad aspects.
Right.
And the good aspects are really good and are part of the reason why the United States is an economic superpower.
Yep.
And the bad aspects are why the United States
Say it has so much crime.
Yeah.
But those bad aspects are what made it possible for it to be the world's economic superpower.
Well, yeah.
Right?
Like,
So
like Steve's saying, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
Yeah. What one thought occurs to me is like, take a look at Mexico, right? And the left. I mean, I know we're talking outside the sphere we were talking about, right? But I don't think the left could even begin to discuss gun control
In
right?
Mexico.
In Mexico, in fact.
Oh no, Mexico has very strict gun control.
Yeah, very strict gun
very strict legal gun control, but it's just utterly ineffective.
Yeah.
They
like
have no
everything
means of
about it. Like,
enforcement. They have no means of enforcement.
Yeah, Mexico's a very poorly governed country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's
well,
just,
but I mean, how could you govern that, right? I think the only way that Mexico solves its issues is like a civil war. They need like the civilian population to arm itself and fight back against the fucking drug lords.
Against the cartels.
well, and when they've had
just
that,
take them on and just fucking wipe them out. You're just like, listen, you're killing us anyways. We're coming after you now. Fuck you.
it's
right?
there have been in places like Sinaloa, there have been, they called them, I think, auto defenses. There have been like civilian militia groups.
Yeah.
And where the government can, they're always trying to like put those groups down.
Yeah.
Like
they shouldn't.
disarm those groups and stuff like that. But
That's traditional, though.
But-
Like most law enforcement agencies around the world have always seen
Absolutely.
vigilantism as a much bigger threat than criminality.
Than the actual crime, yeah.
Well, again, now we're talking about the people, like trying to live within the rules but not being able to.
Right.
But being disciplined for doing so.
Yep.
Right. If they step slightly outside the line. Right. So,
Is there any other universal policy that we've left out of these out of the big five, or that it at least stands distinctly out from these big five?
I mean, unemployment, welfare.
With that, yeah, but we've talked about the welfare state. Just to recap, we've talked about like the big five kind of policy drives: state healthcare, the welfare state. We've talked about the delegitimization of Western culture, immigration, and citizen disarmament.
Actually, we haven't talked anywhere near enough about the delegitimization of Western culture, but I think that's another episode.
But we've at least mentioned it. It's part of that. Okay. Is there anything we're forgetting?
Oh, probably. Probably.
But do we know of anything? Is there anything that leaps to your mind? Because those are the only five I could think of.
Yeah, not off the top of my head.
So can we distill, like in the way we took the big, I think it was the big seven of policies of Republican Spain, and then we distilled it into five principles.
Yeah.
What principles can we distill from the big five policies we've just identified? So let's go back. Healthcare. What is the principle?
Make sure everyone has affordable health care.
But why? That's the what. Give me the why.
Because everyone deserves affordable health care. Every single member of Canadian society deserves affordable health care.
Why?
Because it speaks to standard of living. Because as a society, we want everyone to have affordable health care.
Right. But why?
Human dignity.
So can we say that the principle is
I
a
hesitate to go
minimum
so
of
far.
human dignity? Like that we value human dignity?
We value human life.
Okay.
And so if death can be prevented, we would like to see it prevented.
Here's
Right.
one for you.
Go ahead.
As the big, and this would be a relatively new one. But and Canada is the leader. How about the right to die?
That definitely, I would say, fits into human dignity.
Think so?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me.
Absolutely,
Yep.
it does. And it's the inverse of what I was just talking about, right? Because we do have this predilection here that death is bad,
Yes.
pain is bad, to the extent now that inconvenience is bad. Right? When I was at Starbucks getting the drinks this morning. There was a fair lineup, and there was a big bag for Christine that some Uber driver came and picked up her food eats on the go, whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, what a lazy ass fucking society we live in these days. You can't even be bothered to go down to the Starbucks. You need it brought to your fucking door. Or, heaven forbid, you buy yourself a coffee machine and make it for yourself. Right? Like,
Okay, but you wouldn't say that about pizza or Chinese food, right? How long have you been able to get pizza or Chinese food delivered in North America?
Almost kind of
50 years. 50 years.
Yeah.
All the internet did was expand it to McDonald's and Starbucks.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can't tell
to
me
me,
can't tell me it's less moral to get pizza or to get Starbucks delivered than it is to get pizza delivered.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, no, it speaks to me. It's like, okay, the minute I start seeing delivery drivers show up at the fucking 7-Eleven, right? That's when I'm okay. I'm done. I'm moving to a beach in Costa Rica, right?
Okay, and you'll need Amazon even more on the beach in Costa Rica. So
I'm not going to
Amazon even more.
Fuck that. Okay,
Well,
or buying one of those houses to fix up in fucking Italy somewhere. It's just like, no, I get so little time for the laziness.
I'm pretty
society.
sure my sister's trying to rope me in on one of those schemes.
Oh, to buy a little house in Italy somewhere?
Buy a place in Italy. Me
Right.
and her and her husband we're going to move to Italy.
So a potential principle here is that human dignity is of the essence.
Yeah.
Like a principle behind healthcare.
Yeah.
I'll throw this out.
Life and health, like good health.
I'm going to throw this out. Some things are too important to be left to the private sector.
Yeah. Abso-fucking-lutely. I agree with that 100%. Some things are too important to be left to the public sector
Or
and
private sector.
or the
Private
private sector. And I'll agree with both, right? Yeah, the private sector cannot be trusted in many, many, many ways.
Would you say that is an accurate principle behind the drive for state healthcare?
I think so, yeah.
How about the welfare state? Give me a principle that kind of like the motivation, the why. Why do we have a welfare state?
It's moral for a society. It's a moral imperative for a society to help its downtrodden.
Ah, yes. But why must the state be the actor? Why can we not have, like, we replaced non-state actors, guilds, churches, fellowship associations. We replaced those in the 20th century with the state. Why?
Well, I think
Probably a desire to universalize it. Sorry to over.
No, it's all good. Steve, you're talking. I don't.
But
This
yeah,
is what I love about this series. He gets into it.
But I think like a desire to universalize it and
Translate that into a principle.
it shouldn't matter if you're not Catholic.
Exactly.
It shouldn't matter
if you're not a member of a guild.
If you're not a member of a guild, or it shouldn't matter if you don't belong to one of these organizations or things, right?
But so long as, okay, I'm being devil's advocate because I'm trying to tease details out of you
Yeah, I
guys.
understand.
So long as you are at least covered by a group, what does it matter? And you could make an argument that these organizations were more efficient than the state.
Yeah, but
Especially
I think
in retrospect of say the last, say, 80 years of experience with a welfare state.
Yeah, but I think 80 years ago, people probably more likely thought the opposite.
Right.
That the state would be making more efficient than all these disparate groups.
And that's how the welfare state was created because we hadn't tried it before.
Yeah.
But now we know how completely inefficient the welfare state is. Yet when you look at the statements of the coalition that recently came to power in France, what was the number one thing they talked about? It was the big three that, we're going to make this state healthcare work. We're going to make this welfare state work. We're going to end austerity.
I thought it was, does anybody remember the words, the Internationale?
But like they were still...
Or the Marseillaise.
Yeah, that's Marseillaise has always been the national anthem, I think. I don't know.
No, but the Internationale being specifically communist.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the far leftist.
Right.
As the joke, people. It was a joke. That's true.
Yeah, but the coalition
Nobody
that
gets
is in
it.
power is actually center-right.
Clearly I'm too smart.
What? In France?
Macron's prime minister is
Oh,
of
no,
the
I'm
right.
talking about the parliament, the most recent elections.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. When the left banded together to keep Marine Le Pen's party.
Yeah, to keep Front National out of power.
Yeah, there you
But
go.
this is what they talked about was how can we make these institutions which have been failing for decades, how can we make them work as opposed to saying, okay, we need a new solution?
Well, let's. I'm going to rewind a bit to the whole point behind it, right? I would argue that from a government perspective, as representative of the nation's interests, including GDP, right, and the economy, welfare and unemployment makes sense in that these people with as minimal amounts as these are, they are paying rent to landlords. They are buying food from grocery stores.
Yep.
They are, they're probably spending money on stuff they shouldn't be, right? But, and to use a really extreme example, we don't have a bunch of bodies putrefying all over the fucking place that they're leading to disease and needing cleaning up and stuff like that, right? I mean, to me, it's all part and parcel. They contribute to GDP by contributing to the economy, right? And so that whole concept needs to be tweaked because that's always been the pinnacle of what the right is able to look at and say, listen, it just makes for lazy people, right? And to an extent it's true. The thing that gets me is anyone who's living on welfare and just kind of going, well, this is enough for me. I'm like, all right, if that's the kind of life you want to live, if that's how lazy you want to be, right? What we need to do is kind of up the motivation for people to want more. And I think that is completely, we're circling back to the beginning of the conversation, right? Why do the individuals in our society not expect more of and for themselves than what they're doing right now?
So how do I translate that into a principle? Into a motivating principle behind the welfare state? Like, we know what it is. Why do we want it? And the emphasis being on state, not on welfare. Like, we always talk about, like, we don't want people starving to death in the streets. Well, we never have. It's not like we just saw, like, starvation and people dying in destitution prior to 1900 as a social good. Nobody ever did. The emphasis on the welfare state, for this, like, what I want to talk about here is the state. So what principle can we say motivates that desire to have this in the hands of the government?
A minimum basic income, a minimum standard of living actually contributes to the overall economy.
But that
contributes to GDP.
But that's the what. We know why, or we know how important welfare is.
The why is we get a better GDP out of it than without doing it.
What if I said to you, okay, cool, let's do all of those things, but handle it outside of the hands of government?
Who?
So,
you bring this up a lot of the time. What we did before. The reason we got away from what we did before is because it wasn't covering all the bases.
So can we say that our principle is that the state does it better?
No, I don't think, but it does it universally. We're back to that universality, I think.
Okay.
Right?
Well, the state cares about it more. I would say it doesn't do it efficiently.
Right, but the state cares more.
The state cares about it more.
So how can I rephrase that as a principle? That the state... okay, I'm throwing a dart here. Help me improve this. The state cares more about the people. That's not a principle.
Here.
That the principle being that the state is the higher moral actor.
The state thrives on a population
Allow me...
with a basic standard of living.
Okay.
Let me try this. The state is, because, I mean, we're talking about, we're in the G20s, we're talking about liberal democracies.
Yes.
Generally.
Yep.
The state is the instrument of society as a whole. Okay? It is, because these are representative democracies.
Yep.
Right? The state is the actor of the population, of the society, of everyone. Right? So the state is the moral actor because there is at least a democratic consensus that this thing should be done. And so the state is the actor to do it because the state is the actor for the population as a whole or the society as a whole. So if the society says we want universality of coverage for the poor and downtrodden and of assistance for the poor and downtrodden, the state is the system by which we do that because it's not the Catholic Church anymore.
So the state is the manifestation of the collective will.
Yes.
Yes.
Is that a principle that we can say?
We can. I'd say we'd have to limit that currently to liberal democracies.
Sure. Yeah, but in a
liberal democracies.
Absolutely. I think that's a fine because that covers.
Yeah.
That is a statement that it's a coverall.
The state, and I'm going to write this down. The state is the manifestation of the collective will, and that is the principle behind the idea of the welfare state or the administrative state.
Yeah. Where it exists and how it exists.
Because the example I was thinking of is like say we separating the what from the why. Footwear is essential for human life. You cannot survive without something on your feet.
Yeah.
Yet we don't see a need to nationalize footwear manufacture.
Unless you're Bernie Sanders.
I'm not saying everybody, but
come
but
on. Bernie's barely in the news anymore. Stop fucking picking on Bernie.
I'm just trying to make
my
a joke.
He never mentioned shoes.
thin skin.
He did.
We've never, no state has said like this is our priority. We are going to nationalize shoe manufacture.
Yeah.
We've been content to say, the private sector can do that. That's what I mean. Like, okay, why is it absolutely essential that the state handle social welfare and not allow other entities not to?
Well, social welfare is a much different product than something tangible like a shoe,
right?
Or
it's a
cell
bigger
phone.
basket. So that's why I've been asking for like a principle. So if we say because the welfare state exists or is a priority because the state is the manifestation of the collective will.
Yes.
Okay.
Because how do you, and nobody's figured out how do you manage or how do you manifest the for-profit Welfare Inc., whose product is the uplifting of the poor and downtrodden of society? How do you privatize that?
Can you run that by me again?
Well, if the product is
Actually, no, you could.
Well, hold on. I want to hear what you were saying because I only caught half of it because I was still writing down that principle.
The question is if your product is uplifting the poor and downtrodden of society and allowing them to access re-access self-sufficiency and potentially access the middle class.
Yeah.
How do you make that a for-profit thing?
Here.
Because a private entity, unless it's a charity, has to operate as a for-profit.
Unless it's a charity.
Unless it's a charity.
And that's traditionally is charities that did that work, that only had to break even. In fact, they could even run at a loss.
Yeah.
Because they sought, they took their funding from the rest of the community.
Right.
So to use an example, say like a benevolent association had no revenue generation mechanism whatsoever. It relied on the community to voluntarily fund it.
Okay.
Right? Is that a part of what we're talking about? No.
I think it was, I
think so.
It should not be voluntary to look. Is that maybe a principle that responsibility for your nation, for your community, should not be voluntary? Is that a principle?
No.
Say that, look, you shouldn't have the ability to opt out of funding the welfare state. You shouldn't be allowed to say, no, screw them guys.
Well, I think that's
Is that maybe a drive behind the idea of the state doing this?
Yeah, I bet that's
that's tacitly implied as part of the collective will.
Right.
Whatever laws are in place that govern this. We're saying you are a corporation, you are taxed at X amount.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not saying you can't opt out of this, but we are saying
you can't opt out of it.
You will be prosecuted if you don't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're saying. Right? It's a manifestation of the public will. I do have an answer for you, Steve. Like, how do we make this happen?
Like, how do you make it work for profit?
Instead of charitable donators. So I create...
Welfare Inc.
No, Lift Them Up Incorporated, right? Get a bunch of shareholders. I take a bunch of homeless people. I give them somewhere to detox, program, I get them cleaned up. I give them jobs. Hey, I happen to have a job for you over here in this... Okay, I don't know. How about auto recycling? Just to use something. I need people to take apart cars. I'm going to train you to do it, and you're going to create an inventory, and we're going to sell these parts to people. And now we're making money. You guys have got jobs. You guys can go buy things, rent a home, whatever. We're making a profit that goes to the shareholders, right?
How are they making a profit again? Sorry.
You're
taking in these poor and downtrodden people who have no way to compensate you. You're investing a bunch of money in their recovery and
So it takes.
education
So you're
and
saying to the
reinterest
shareholders,
society.
you're saying to the shareholders, okay, this is what I need for the business model.
Okay, so
Right?
but where
I need. This is the original investment. The
Right.
original investment is take these people, detox them, train them up, feed them, give them somewhere to live, pay them a wage, right?
okay,
And in return for all these things, they're going to work for me, and we're gonna, like I said, the example I use is the recycled auto parts. And so they're taking, and then we're gonna sell these parts, and people are gonna want them, and they're going to be massively popular, and people are gonna buy them, and we're gonna make a profit that's gonna go to the corporations. No, they go to the investors, right?
I'm sorry. Did Trent just propose a system of indentured servitude?
Yep.
I'm pretty sure.
Yep. Run that by us again.
Well, no, I'm not. They don't have to stay with the job.
Okay, but so if everybody you invest all because you're investing all this money at the front end when people are unable to take care of themselves,
Right.
If as soon as they get on their feet, they're like, "Nah, I quit," and they
Yeah.
leave you holding the bill for
Yeah.
$100,000
For the investment you made.
for the investment you made, and they don't pay it back.
Yeah, there's no return on the investment.
That's not a profitable enterprise
right.
because everybody will quit as soon as they're back on their feet.
Or as soon as they get
Why?
what they want.
Not necessarily.
Okay, well, not everybody, but it's
But again, it
you're
doesn't work both
incentivized.
ways. You
'Cause
can't not necessarily is everyone going to pay back.
if you stay
Right.
No, but you gotta look at your incentive structure here.
Yeah.
Right? So your incentive structure is at the end of this thing, at the midpoint of okay, I'm back on my feet, I'm not a drug addict, I'm able to hold a job and make money. Now my incentives are this. I can stay here and pay back the 120 grand you've invested in me over a year, slowly after so many times.
I'm not asking you to pay it back.
Well, then how do you make money?
Yeah.
You work, you provide a service to create a product that is sold, and that creates profit.
But what's the incentive for the individual worker to do that?
Right. So you're
paycheck.
you're saying
So you're just saying just give them a job.
so you're
I'm
saying
saying I'm gonna give 'em a job.
What you're saying is that the product that once these people get produced, like whatever the widget they're manufacturing
Yeah.
down the line,
Yeah.
will be profitable enough to cover all the expenses you invest in them at the front end.
You asked for a model. This is a model.
Okay.
So in other words,
No, I'm just
right?
but I'm just trying to understand. So
Yeah.
conventional employment as we understand it.
So basically what you're saying is this is a normal company, but its onboarding expenses are way higher than everybody else's. because it's-
he's a Reaganite who's saying the best social program is a job,
Sure.
which I'm not quite prepared to sign off on. Trent suddenly having this road to Damascus conversion join the Reaganite Republicans.
Steve asked a question.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No,
I'm providing an answer.
Okay.
I don't know what the upfront
It's
operational
just
cost.
not the answer we expected from you.
No, but what I will tell you is, I'm all about culture.
Sure.
Right? Culture includes training, includes loyalty. Right? You give these people a chance. There's a good chance. Like you're right. It's a big if, but I'm not going to force them to stay. I bet a lot of them choose to stay because it's for any number of reasons. Now you could include in that business model. It's like, listen, you want to come poach my people, right? Or I can offer them we create a temp agency, whatever. Fuck.
Okay.
Right?
So,
But-
I misunderstood you. So, off the hop there. So, as far as to distill it to what I can understand is you're just basically saying, like I said, this is a company that manufactures a widget, and essentially because you're using as your employment pool people who can't help themselves and need assistance to get to the point.
Yeah.
You're just basically, this is a manufacturing company with really expensive onboarding.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
It requires a massive investment.
Yeah, because the
in
company
recruiting.
now has to house them. It's got to feed them.
Yeah, it's now has massive recruiting expenses.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, eventually it gets to the point. And I can tell you, like,
So your widget's got to be really profitable, which is
Extremely
this is
profitable.
not. This is not.
Yeah.
This is not impossible. There's a very successful company I was doing consulting with last year, right? They, by their own calculations, their turnover rate. Every time they brought in a new person, it cost them $23,000 to train that person.
Sure, I believe
Up
it. Well,
to- up
especially
to-
if they're in a more complex industry. Yeah.
Up to 70% efficiency. Not 100% efficiency, 70% efficiency. And they were losing... Oh, I'm trying to remember how many people they were losing. Like it was like a dozen a month.
Out of how many?
60.
Ooh, that's a lot.
That's bad.
Yeah, that's bad.
There's your culture issue right off the bat.
These are calculations.
That's high.
These are calculations the ops manager had made, but had not passed on to the owner.
I guess not.
Right. And
that's
the
bad news.
owner
Like-
didn't want to hear it. Right. But this is one, and this is a successful. They are still profitable. Their doors are still open a year later.
Oh, okay. So maybe they considered that to be the lesser of two evils. Maybe they considered the disease to be preferable to the cure. Because I see
What I'm saying is, they could be far more profitable if they
fixed
just
that
took the
problem.
time
If they-
to train their people off the bat.
Yeah.
And go out of their way to keep them instead of treating them like everybody's
disposables.
Everybody's disposable.
They really need to work on retention. That could really help their
Yeah.
profitability. Yeah.
Well,
because even the ones who are there, who stay,
Yeah.
are phoning in sick consistently.
Yeah.
yeah. So there's a huge morale problem there.
Yeah.
Well, it's like the CF. We've got this giant sausage machine, and for every like pound of meat that we're putting in, we're getting like 2 ounces of sausage out the end.
Yeah.
Because we're leaking meat everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, I weep for the forces.
But
the
armed forces says, you know what? Trying to figure out where those leaks are, that's hard. And then repairing the leaks, in other words, changing the way we operate,
Yeah.
is even harder.
Yeah.
You know what?
So
It's
why
just a
bother?
lot easier to just push more meat into the machine, right?
It's like the railroad.
Yeah. So maybe, So maybe that's what your client was looking at to say, you know what? I could probably maybe make an extra $1 million a year if I, solve those problems of retention. But maybe they feel that it probably cost me $1.2 million to solve those problems of retention.
It won't.
Maybe.
I don't
know.
I pointed out.
Yeah.
You know what? So here's,
And what did they do with
nothing,
they do with your plan?
nothing? They stopped using me.
Wow.
They didn't want to hear what I had to say. Here's a stat. Here's a simple calculation I came up with, right? And I may have told you guys some of this before. So they had 2 shifts.
Yeah.
And these 2 shifts had 1 split second in common at 3:30 every afternoon.
1 split second in common?
Day shift ended at 3:30. Evening shift started at 3:30.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So they were passing each other
No
at the
overlap.
time clock.
No handover.
overlap. No communication.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? They had mistakes being made all over the place, right? So I suggested, well, you know what these people need? They need 15 minutes overlap.
Yeah.
They're going to talk to each other.
do a
They're
handover.
they're going. So on a practical scale,
Yeah.
they're going to communicate important details from the day.
Yeah.
On a cultural scale,
Yeah.
they're going to get to know about and care about each other.
Yeah.
Right? Because these
Yeah.
2 shifts hate each other.
Oh, I bet.
Right? They're always blaming each
They're
other
always
for
blaming each
everything.
other for everything. Yeah.
Right?
Those fucking day shift
Try
guys.
to get anything fixed.
Goddamn night shift guys.
Right?
Screw this up.
And it turned out that the 2 managers, so they had floor managers for both shifts. Both great guys.
Yeah.
Right? There was one critical point in the drawer making
Yeah.
facility where the evening shift was always fucking up what the day shift had done.
Oh, okay.
And it's because...
So these guys were furniture manufacturers.
yeah.
Cabinet
Yeah.
makers, weren't they? You said?
Cabinet
Yeah.
makers.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And it turned out, and this took me months to figure out, right? But the way the paperwork was laid out, there were 2 copies of the paperwork. One went into this file over here,
Yeah.
and one went into this slot over here. And the day shift was told, if it's in that slot there, you put it there to indicate to the night shift that this is done. And the night manager was telling the night shift, if it's in there, it hasn't been done.
Oh.
Right?
Right.
And these are the floor managers.
Right.
Right? So every day they were getting this increasing stack of duplicate drawers.
Right.
Right? Anyways, they made calculations so that they had what they call pink sheets, which was in-house mistakes that they caught. Then they had yellow sheets that were pink sheets that made it out the door to the client.
Okay.
Right? By their calculations, those yellow sheets alone were costing them 2.1% of gross revenues. Right? You take 2.1%, you multiply it by one worker's 8-hour day. You know what it turns out to be? About 13 fucking minutes. Right? Right there. Right fucking there. If you gave every one of your workers 15 minutes overlap, I guarantee you that would fix the 2.1% going out the door and some of those pink sheets.
Right.
Right? That you're having to pay for rework and rework.
Yeah.
Right? But try having those conversations with him. He's not thinking.
That you like the owner.
The owner is not thinking, oh, that's going to cost me $1.2 million to save $1 million. He's thinking, this is the way I do things.
Right.
Don't tell me how to do things.
Well, you know what? He's going to get replaced by the guy who does think that way. That's
The guy who does
destruction.
think that way is waiting in the wings to take over from him when he retires.
Or he's working at a different company.
Or he's working. That's what I'm thinking. He's working at a different
He's already
company.
given him, fired his shot across the bow saying, listen, if you don't vacate this position soon, I'm already getting offers.
I'm leaving.
Right? So
More power to him.
Good luck with that, right? Because that guy is the guy I worked with the most. And he's switched on as fuck. Right? Anyways, I think we're digressing enough. I do want to mention something before we close off. I watched on Netflix about a month ago, maybe a month and a half, a series about Robert F. Kennedy. And it was mind-blowing.
Senior or junior?
Senior.
Okay,
Senior. Yeah.
The guy was assassinated in the 60s.
Yeah, the guy was assassinated in 1968. It's when he was making his run for the candidacy for the Democrats. I had no idea the popularity of the guy and the movement that was behind him and how he came to be who was, how important he was to Jack's cabinet.
Because he was Attorney General?
Yeah, he was Attorney General, and he was critical to the Cuban Missile Crisis. And just the mere fact that the president's brother was the Attorney General. But the cult of personality that he built and how he built it over, from 1964 through 1968, and just how popular he was at the time of his death. Mind blowing. I couldn't believe it. Like in my mind, he has turned out to be way more what I thought Jack Kennedy was than Jack Kennedy himself. Sorry.
He was going to be a shoo-in for 68 too.
Yeah.
Like he was.
Yeah, he would have. Yeah.
And he was like LBJ actually had to negotiate an agreement with him to not run against him in 64.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And
before we wrap this up, we got to get to the point which I think is the most important here. Because it's most critical to today's environment.
This is going to be interesting.
What is the principle behind immigration?
Truckers are the most important employees in society. Oh, no.
And I think we'll throw this one on like the whole talk. We talked about the culture wars, the delegitimization of society. Let's set that aside or roll it in immigration. I don't care which one you want to do. But immigration, what is the principle? Why is it so important?
Well, I mean, it's positive contribution to society.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I mean, in so many ways.
What makes it so positive?
Help with population growth.
Okay.
And managed effectively, contribution to the economy, sector by sector.
Has that been happening?
No, we know it has.
But we're talking principles, not necessarily results.
Yeah, we're talking principles.
Here's my thing. There's one thing we didn't talk about when we talked about immigration. That's part and parcel of the progressive view of immigration, and that is multiculturalism.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. This is why.
Now we're talking principles. Keep going, buddy. I'm picking up what you're laying down.
Well, I think that's as far as I can go. We haven't talked.
Oh, don't give me
what do you want?
that.
No, we have to stop here.
No.
We have to stop.
No. You give me 9 more minutes.
No.
And Steve's got to give me 3 at least.
We are not getting 9
You
more
cannot
minutes. No.
leave me with that.
We have to leave it because otherwise.
No, we cannot.
Steve just pulled another onion out of the bag, man.
It's important, though.
Yeah.
Multiculturalism is...
it's important enough that
set
we
a
are
policy.
not going to discuss it right now.
No, we can't. No, we cannot go this far and just leave this and just walk away from it. You got to give me 9 minutes, man.
Well, I think what Trent is saying is we need episode 3.
We need another episode.
Immigration should be its own episode then.
Immigration and multiculturalism.
I don't understand why multiculturalism is so important to progressives. I don't get
Neither
it.
do I.
I'm my personal view is
I will explain it
I'm
to
pro-immigration,
you.
but I'm also pro-assimilation. Okay.
I will explain it to you.
I think
but
they're definitely tied. Like immigration and multiculturalism are absolutely joined at the hip.
Right.
On the left.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm
Explain
not,
away.
I'm not
Yeah.
explaining it now. No, next episode.
You've got 8 minutes.
No,
The floor is yours, sir.
I need to pee.
Oh my God.
We're done.
I'm
We
gonna,
can't. I do not want to open this can of worms right now. I
Trent-
do not
Trent-
want to peel back any more of this onion.
Wow.
That time he said we're going for a smoke break and never came back. That's getting back to his
That's
head.
what's happening
He's
now.
trying to flex his muscle again.
I don't know, man. I'm going to say that
I
the
think
principle
it
behind it.
wasn't- I never came back. You guys knew I wasn't coming back. I had to leave.
I'm going to say that the principle behind that is the desire to dismantle, to fundamentally transform the state. Or, no, the nation. Fundamentally transform
the society.
The nation. The society.
I'm going
Yeah.
to debate this, not today.
Well, I've got 7 more minutes.
We don't-
and
we
you
don't-
can choose to challenge it or not. If you choose to abstain from the vote on the floor, carry on, sir.
7 minutes nonsense.
Oh, I'm just saying. Well, that's a good round number to end it at the
What,
bottom. of the hour.
127?
Or say I've got 13:23 right now. So to say wrap her up
Well,
at
you're
13:30.
is
my watch off?
fast.
See, I've got
Oh,
1320s.
Yeah, my phone says 13:21, so I got more time than I thought. Ha 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 ha.
Listen, you fascist. We don't have to deal in round fucking numbers here.
So that's my take.
I promised Karen I'd be out of here at 13:22. So
All right. Well, and before you go, I'm also going to say that when we said the principle behind the welfare state and maybe even Medicare was, is the state is the manifestation of the collective will.
okay,
I'm going to say that's another way of saying the state is the only moral actor. I think at the end of the day, they're the same thing.
we are not saying. Oh, what?
I cannot really tease apart any distinction between those two.
Well,
That, it's the manifestation of the collective will, but that's another way of saying it's the only moral actor.
no, it's the actor in that position to do that, and always in the context of the electorate that's put it in its place at that moment, and within the broader cultural context.
So nobody is saying that the state is better at it. Nobody is saying that the state is more efficient. We're saying something else. We're saying that the state is, at the end of the day, the only moral actor.
No, we are saying that they are representative of the collective will of the people, and that's it. That's nothing moral or efficient about it. We're just saying that this, at the moment, reflects the broad culture of society as reflected in the moment of the election.
Steve, what do you think?
I'm feeling gaslit.
Feeling gaslit.
What? By him,
What do
I
you
hope.
think? What do you think? What are your thoughts? Rounding this out.
Well, I don't know.
3, 2, 1.
Go.
And no. I think I'm more on your side, Patty, than I am. I think
There's no sides. There's no sides.
Yeah, there's no sides.
I'm
This is
not
very
taking a
progressive
side.
view. There's a very
very
progressive
progressive
view.
view. Yeah.
There's no left. There's no right.
No,
There's only a great big circle, and it's made up with hugs.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Good Lord. I don't know. I think I think that progressivism as a global movement does generally view the state as the primary moral actor,
Yeah.
right? And thinks there is a morality to that is not there in the private sector.
And I'm
say-
saying that is the principle that motivates ideas like healthcare, like when we said there's certain things that are too important to be left in the hands of the private sector. That's basically an extension of saying that the state is the only responsible actor, is the only legitimate actor to handle these questions, these problems.
Yeah, and I think and so that's the view. We see that it's not the effect, right? But I think it's still a view of a large, Trent accepted, large number of people. on the progressive left.
Now, the end.
I thought
Do
we
these
done-
not, 3 minutes left, do these not differ fundamentally from the original 5 principles we identified at the end of the last episode?
Well, that was so goddamn long ago. I can't even remember what those were.
I'm
It
going to
was,
tell them to
it
you.
was 7 and you distilled them, and we've already discussed them.
No, there's 7 policies, 5 principles. Originally, equality among individuals,
Yes.
equality of opportunity, disputes solved openly, fair, and transparently,
Yes.
institutions that are fair and accountable,
Yes.
and a minimum standard of living.
Okay. What's
Whereas-
the question?
Here's the thing.
Like, notice the difference, the evolutionary difference, the divergence from those in the
Yeah.
policies of the left of today.
well, and now the left of today is talking about equality of outcome more than they're
Right,
talking
or
about
that
equality of opportunity.
the state is the only moral actor.
Yeah.
Whether it's accomplishing it or not, it doesn't matter. It's the only moral actor.
yeah.
Well, I think, again,
Or that it's the manifestation of the collective will. Whether it's working or not, that's what it is. And that certain things are too important to be left out of the hand of the state. The only other one we had that I think ties into the old priorities when we said human dignity is of the essence. I think that fits into the old priority of equality among individuals and minimum standard of living.
yeah.
I think that one we still have continuity.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the left has definitely diverged.
Well,
Or is diverged from those older principles to something else.
It's like I said about unions, right? You have to put them in the context of the moment. That's why when we're talking about the Spanish Civil War compared to today, right? Very different concept. What the Spanish Republic was looking to achieve, was looking to fix, was more real. If you get what I mean, it was more dire. It needed
It was more pressing at the moment.
right? Those things needed taken care of. As I said earlier about what's going on right now, the woke left is a movement in search of a cause at any given moment. And no, it's a movement in search of a fucking slogan from moment to moment, right? And that's all it is right now. So, and it is not the same context. What they are fighting against right now is not what was going on in Spain at the time.
So as an old school leftist,
Yes.
a guy who embraces those concepts, the first 5, as I'll call them, say from
Yeah.
Republican Spain,
Yeah.
what do? Do you say, okay, I'm going to go into the work left and try and get it back on track?
Oh, I don't have the
Or
time.
do I abandon it?
I don't have the time and the energy. They're incapable. The
do I
woke left
abandon
is
it entirely?
The woke left is incapable of discourse.
So what do you do? Like I know what we do. As a conservative, I observe it.
I
But
think
as a
what we're-
leftist, what do you do?
What we're starting to see is a pushback against woke that is gaining momentum, and it's going to go the same way that McCarthyism did. Right? These fucking kangaroo trial tactics that they're using are eventually going to burn out, and they're either going to eat themselves, and we've already seen some evidence of that, or society's going to turn on them, and we're already seeing signs of that.
So you're saying basically, as leftists of the old school, wait it out.
Absolutely, it's all we can
just
do.
wait it out.
They're incapable of having any dialogue,
Yeah.
right? So, and I think that's what we're going to find. We are going to have, and I've come to the point to realize that I have to accept that Poilievre is likely to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. And ugly as that may be, we need that.
So would
Because-
it be advisable, say for old school leftists, to say, okay, work within the contemporary conservative movement to guide them back to those principles,
Well,
steer
no.
them away from their more extreme elements?
No, I mean, their more extreme elements are going to be their more extreme elements.
Okay.
I think right now it's just kind of like abandoned ship. Like I'm feeling like a moderate Republican in the States right now. Right?
Yeah, like because Kevin Williamson and Jonah Goldberg point this out that both parties in the United States need to get blown out in an election. They need to because that's the only way they're going to correct themselves.
Right.
Right. And so the same
failure is the only way to guarantee improvement.
Yeah, and if the polls in Canada hold now, that the Liberals will get blown out in the
this
next
will
election,
be the
and that will
worst-
act as a corrective for them.
This
and
will
they'll-
be the worst debacle for any political party in Canada ever.
yeah.
And that will be Justin Trudeau's legacy. And the fact that he is riding this out and the party is letting him ride this out, he is going to destroy them. He came in riding a wave after, who was it, Paul Martin? Had completely destroyed the party.
Well, or at the very least, say you went through a couple of leaders.
Well, there was like 3 leaders.
Yeah,
between
2 or 3
Yeah,
leaders,
but
Martin was the
door.
last prime minister.
Yeah, so by that time, like the Liberal
it's
Party
telling
had
that we don't even remember their names.
Oh no, I think Ignatieff was the one.
Ignatieff was one, and
Yeah.
there was a francophone in there as well.
And
Wasn't it a former conservative?
Dion.
No.
Oh yeah.
Was it?
Stéphane
Yeah,
Dion.
Stéphane Dion.
Yeah.
Maybe it was just the two of them.
Yeah. that could be.
And that party was so down that now he's brought down even worse. And
But there was 3 electoral cycles.
I'm going to find out. You keep talking.
They are not going to have another Justin Trudeau to step into the breach to come up the middle again, right? And
But he didn't come up the middle.
He came up the hard left. He
came up the hard left.
outflanked the NDP on the left.
Yeah.
Well, no, he provided a middle of the road option for people who wanted a middle of the road option.
But maybe as he. No, not really.
I don't know. I don't think he did.
He used the traditional Liberal Party base, and then outflanked the NDP to take the far left voters.
No.
Yep. Yeah, I would say he definitely did that.
he took the voters. He may have taken far left voters from the NDP for that election because they didn't want to see the Tories in power anymore.
Yeah, he definitely
Right.
capitalized on an ABC vote, for sure.
But he brought back the Liberals to the fold who had left. And that was more critical. He gave Liberals the center left that they were looking for, that had been missing, and that no one was going to vote for. And there's all of a sudden this wave of popularity. We had another wave of Trudeau mania, and it's completely backfired. So what we're going to have this time is he's going to have decimated the party, and there will be no one to come back up the middle again. Nobody's going to trust this party.
Just for the record, Paul Martin left in 2006, or governed from 2006. Then Stéphane Dion, and then in 2008, Michael Ignatieff until 2015, and then Justin Trudeau took over the leadership of the Liberal Party. So only the two between Martin.
Who went 2 election cycles? Because there was Stephen Harper had 3 mandates. One as a minority, and then two majorities.
Well, let's say I think Martin was the last prime minister, and I think what was it?
I think Dion, Ignatieff were.
Yeah, in opposition.
Because Martin lost to Harper, right? So that left
Martin
and
lost.
then Dion,
Because Martin served
makes
as
sense,
he never had a majority. Martin had a minority.
Yeah.
As Liberal leader, and then he was in opposition. Dion and Ignatieff, or Dion was leader of the opposition. Ignatieff was third party status because that was in the red wave or the orange wave of Jack Layton.
Yeah.
And then Justin Trudeau took over in 2015 and then achieved in his first election a majority. And then he's been in minority since.
And the CIA poisoned Jack Layton, and we all know what happened after that.
Yes. So just to close, the Hardinian view. So for the humanitarian left, the non-woke left, just saying, batten down the hatches, boys, ride it out. We'll rebuild once woke crashes.
And it's not even going to crash,
Or
right?
fizzle out.
You know, I don't like
woke
Poilievre.
itself.
I don't like the extremes of the Conservative Party right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
But after 50 yada yada years on this rock, and 40 of those living as a voter,
Just saying,
it's okay. These 4 years might not be my favorite politically in this country.
Like woke will remove itself. We don't assume we are on the left. Say I'm like a 22-year-old on the left, and I'm saying, okay, man, give me the benefit of your wisdom and experience. You're saying, don't panic. Woke will remove itself. We'll come back. And it's going to happen organically. Like the left will return to its truth, its traditional stance, kind of on its own. Just be patient.
Well, yeah,
we don't gotta try and force this action because as I say, woke don't listen. Just let them sort themselves out. They'll disappear on their own, and we will be the ones left standing, and we can get back to the program.
Well, yeah. In fact, we can revert back to the previous statement that we defined. Government
Yep.
is the representation of the collective will of the people, and the woke are not the collective will of the people. And
Right.
we are about to find that out whenever our next election
Just
comes up.
wait for it.
Yeah.
Let it. Don't go to panic. Nobody try and force it. It'll happen on its own.
Yeah.
All right.
So saith the man.
So saith the man. Maybe next time we'll talk about the parts of the right that the right needs to police.
We could, but I
Holy
really.
shit! You guys agree there is such a thing?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
Hell yeah, hell yeah.
All
But
right.
I
look forward to that. No, but
after
we've
immigration.
yeah, we're going to talk about immigration and multiculturalism.
Yeah,
All right.
that's the big burning issue.
Thanks,
Ciao,
everyone.
tutti.
Hopefully we get that out before Christmas.
Yes,
That was multiculturalism. I was Italian.
Bye, everyone.